Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the jagged, windswept spines of the world, those perilous heights where the air is thin, the drop is fatal, and the secrets are buried under glades of ancient ice. We are ascending the peaks of Tamriel, specifically the frozen summits of Skyrim, to uncover what lies hidden in the clouds. The mountains in the Elder Scrolls aren't just barriers to annoy you when you're trying to shortcut your way to Riften. They are sacred, terrifying places. They hold gods, monsters, and relics that have survived eras of history that mere mortals have long forgotten. The wind up there whispers truths that the valleys are too loud to hear. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip up the 7,000 steps without pulling a hamstring or getting mauled by a frost troll 3 minutes in. Most of us would be wheezing by the second shrine, begging for a potion of stamina while a snow bear circles in for an easy lunch. But that's the beauty of lore. We get to make the climb without the frostbite. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're currently nestled under a blanket or staring at the ceiling, go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where the guild members are resting their heads tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ascent begins at the very roof of the world. In the province of Skyrim, geography is dominated by verticality, but one peak pierces the sky with such insolence that it seems to challenge the Aedra themselves. This is the Monavan, the throat of the world, the highest point in all of Tamriel. To the Nords, this isn't just a mountain. It is the throat from which Kine breathed humanity into existence at the dawn of time. But for the Dragonborn, it is the site of a pilgrimage that transcends mere geography. The journey starts where most people stop. Travellers and pilgrims usually consider High Hrothgar the destination. They lug their supplies up the stone steps, deliver their offerings to the Greybeards, and head back down to the warmth of Ivarstead. But the monastery is merely a gatehouse. The true secret of the mountain lies past the courtyard, through a barrier of supernatural weather that freezes the blood in the veins of the unworthy. To pass, one must possess the voice, specifically the clear skies shout, a tonal manipulation that demands the weather yield to your will. When the Dovahkiin shouts at the mist, the gale doesn't just dissipate, it cowers. The path clears, revealing a trail of treacherous ice and jagged rock that winds upward into an altitude where the sky turns a dark, bruised violet. At the summit, the isolation is absolute. The soundscape here is stripped of all life. No birds, no rustling trees, only the hollow, lonely roar of the wind whipping around obsidian peaks. It is a place of profound solitude, and yet it is occupied. Perched upon the word wall at the very pinnacle sits Paarthurnax. To the uninitiated, seeing a dragon here triggers a fight-or-flight response. You draw your weapon, check your magicka reserves, and prepare for a blast of fire. But Paarthurnax does not attack. He waits. He is the secret Grandmaster of the Greybeards, the one who taught Jurgen Windcaller the way of the voice. This is a core in-game fact that shifts the entire perspective of the main quest. The pacifist monks who preach silence are led by a creature whose very name means ambition, overlord, cruelty. Paarthurnax is ancient, his scales grey and tattered, his wings pitted with holes from centuries of inactivity and age. He greets the player not with fire, but with philosophy. He is a creature of immense power, who has chosen to sit on a rock and meditate for thousands of years, fighting the biological imperative to dominate. He serves as the guardian of the mountain's greatest scar. Just a few yards from his perch, the air shimmers with a sickly distortion. This is the Time Wound, or Tid Ahran in the Dragon Tongue. It is not merely a magical effect, it is a rupture in the linear progression of history. This is where the ancient Nord heroes, Gormleth, Hakon, and Feldir, used an Elder Scroll to cast Alduin adrift in the currents of time. The mountain remembers this violence. The rock is stained with the metaphysical residue of a dragon break. Obscure lore suggests that the throat of the world is more than just a mountain. It is likely the physical manifestation of the Snowthroat Tower. In Elder Scrolls metaphysics, towers are cosmic structures that stabilize the mortal plane of Mundus, keeping reality from dissolving back into the chaotic soup of oblivion. The stone of this tower is believed by some lore scholars to be the cave, a metaphorical concept referring to Plato's allegory, or perhaps the time wound itself. The prophecy of the Dragonborn mentions the snow tower lies sundered, kingless, bleeding. This suggests that the civil war and the return of Alduin have destabilized the mountain's metaphysical function, making Paarthurnax's vigil not just a penance, but a necessity to hold reality together. The atmosphere up here is thick with this heavy unseen responsibility. Paarthurnax speaks of the Dove, the dragons, as children of time who are naturally prone to domination. He admits that every day is a struggle against his own nature. What is better, he asks in that gravelly, vibrating voice that seems to emanate from the stones themselves? To be born good, or to overcome your evil nature through great effort? This question sparks one of the most heated debates in the entire Elder Scrolls community. Towards the end of the game, the Blades, Delphine and Esbern, discover Paarthurnax's identity. They demand his death. They argue that his past, crimes as Alduin's lieutenant, are unforgivable, and that his current pacifism is a ticking time bomb. A dragon is a dragon, they say. They view his existence as an unacceptable risk. The community, however, largely rejects this. Go to any forum, any comment section discussing this quest, and you will find an overwhelming defense of the old dragon. Players view the Blade's ultimatum as a betrayal. After all, Paarthurnax provided the crucial knowledge needed to defeat Alduin. He waited millennia for the Dragonborn. To climb the highest peak in the world, share wisdom with this ancient sage, and then execute him on the orders of a paranoid spy organization feels like a moral failing. It is a testament to the writing of this mountaintop encounter that a collection of pixels and voice lines can evoke such fierce loyalty. The peak offers more than just moral dilemmas. It offers a vantage point unlike any other. Standing at the edge of the cliff looking down past the clouds, you can see the whole of Skyrim laid out like a map on a table. The white plains of Whiterun, the marshy gloom of Morthal, the distant sparkle of the Sea of Ghosts. It puts the petty squabbles of the Civil War into perspective. The Stormcloaks and the Imperials are fighting over lines on a map, while up here, a dragon meditates on the end of the world. The wind bites harder as the sun begins to set, casting long purple shadows across the snow. The throat of the world is a place of duality, fire and ice, dragon and man, past and future. It is a harsh environment that demands respect. You cannot simply fast travel here without first earning the right to climb. You must prove you can speak the language of the sky. But even as we leave the old dragon to his meditation, turning our backs on the time wound and the swirling vapours of the summit, we realise that the mountain hides smaller, more tangible secrets. Not every discovery on the peaks involves metaphysical towers or ancient dragon lords. Sometimes the developers leave something purely for the joy of the climb, a nod to the very act of exploration itself. As you descend slightly from Paarthurnax's perch, navigating the treacherous lip of the mountain, where a single slip means a fall into the endless grey void, you might spot something glinting in the snow. It's not a weapon of war, nor a scroll of immense power. It is a tool, a simple yet distinctive pickaxe embedded in the very ore of the mountain's crown. This isn't just random loot generation. This is a deliberate placement, a reward for those who ignore the path and scramble over the geometry just to see if they can. It sits there, waiting for the curious, a testament to the fact that someone, somewhere, knew you would try to reach the very top of the highest rock just because it was there. The cold up here is absolute. It seeps through plate armour and dragon scale alike. The silence returns as you step away from the dragon's roost, the wind reclaiming its dominance over the audio landscape. The throat of the world is a heavy start to our journey, a place of immense narrative weight. It sets the tone for what mountains represent in this land. They are not just obstacles. They are distinct biomes of story, preserving the things that the lowlands are too busy to remember. The snow crunches under your boots as you navigate the rocky spine, looking for a way down that doesn't involve plummeting to your death. The sheer verticality is dizzying. In the distance, other peaks rise from the mist, each holding their own dark secrets, their own guardians, and their own tragedies. We have only just begun to scratch the surface of the frost. As the mists of the Monavan recede behind us, we look toward the jagged geography of the rest of the province. The throat might be the highest, but it is certainly not the only summit worth climbing. And while Paarthurnax offers wisdom, other peaks offer only danger, mystery, and the occasional Easter egg left by a developer with a sense of humour and a love for obscure cross-game references. Descending slightly from the philosophical heights of Paarthurnax's roost, we find ourselves grappling with the sheer, jagged geometry of the mountaintop. You know the drill, jumping incessantly against a near-vertical polygon mesh, hoping to find that one tiny pixel of friction that counts as standing. This is Skyrim mountain climbing in its purest form, less about mountaineering skills and more about abusing the physics engine. But at the very pinnacle of the throat of the world, even above the word wall where the old dragon rests, there is a specific reward for this kind of stubborn exploration. If you scramble up the rocky outcroppings to the absolute highest point of the game world, the tippy top of the mountain model itself, you will find an ore vein, and sticking out of that ore vein is a unique item, the Notched Pickaxe. To the casual observer, this looks like just another mining tool. It has the same model as every other iron pickaxe you've ignored in embuscades and bandit camps, but hover your crosshair over it and you'll see it carries a unique enchantment. The Notched Pickaxe boosts your smithing skill by 5 points and deals 5 points of shock damage to enemies. It's a strange combination, shock damage on a mining tool. Who are you fighting while mining malachite? The rocks? The existence of this item is a core in-game fact, a verified unique weapon that sits in a fixed location. It's not randomized loot, it is always there, waiting at the summit. However, the name Notched sparked a wildfire of speculation when the game first launched in 2011. The most prominent theory, and one widely accepted by the community for years, is that the Notched Pickaxe is a direct homage to Marcus Notch Persson, the creator of Minecraft. Think about it. Minecraft was exploding in popularity during Skyrim's development. The game is famously about mining. The primary tool is a pickaxe. Finding a notched pickaxe at the top of the highest mountain in a world exploration game seemed like a clear tip of the hat from Bethesda to Mojang. It was a gamer-to-gamer fist bump acknowledging the shared DNA of open-world creativity. However, this wholesome theory hit a snag in the form of a legal battle. Around the same time, Bethesda's parent company ZeniMax was actually suing Mojang over the name of their card game Scrolls, arguing it infringed on the Elder Scrolls trademark. The timing made the tribute seem awkward. Would developers include an Easter egg honouring a guy their lawyers were currently fighting? This led to a counter-narrative. Some fans speculated that Notched referred to the peaks of mountains themselves, a notch in the landscape. Or perhaps it was a reference to the intrepid climbers of real-world history like George Mallory, who famously answered because it's there when asked why he wanted to climb Everest. But the obscurity deepens. In an interview years later, a Bethesda developer hinted that the item was indeed a reference to Notch and Minecraft, legal battles be damned. The developers on the ground floor rarely care about the squabbles of the legal department. They just wanted to acknowledge a game that had redefined the genre. But there is an even deeper layer of obscure lore connected to this item that most players miss entirely. The enchantment on the pickaxe, smithing expertise and shock damage, might actually be a callback to an item from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. In that game, there was a unique pair of pants called the Apron of the Master Artisan. Yes, pants called an apron, don't ask, which boosted similar attributes. But more relevant is the Smith's Hammer found in Morrowind, specifically the Sorolus Sacus Hammer, which was a master-grade repair tool. The Notched Pickaxe carries the torch of these utility artifacts, items meant not for slaying gods, but for the humble act of crafting. It's a reminder that in a world of Daedric princes and world-eating dragons, the act of creation is still magic. Smithing in Skyrim is practically a superpower anyway. If you grind enough iron daggers, you can craft armor that makes you invincible. The Notched Pickaxe is the symbol of that grind. It is the Excalibur of the crafting menu. From a gameplay perspective, the pickaxe is actually quite useful for a specific build. Since it can be disenchanted, you can learn the Notched Pickaxe effect and apply it to 2 different weapons if you have the dual enchanting perk. This allows you to stack smithing bonuses in ways the game doesn't normally permit, letting you push your armor rating just a little bit further past the cap. It's a min-maxer's dream disguised as an Easter egg. There is a serene irony in finding this item here. You have just ascended the 7,000 steps, learned the history of the Dragon War, and spoken to a creature as old as time. The music is swelling with epic choral arrangements, and your reward for going even higher is a pickaxe. It grounds the experience. It reminds you that despite being the Dragonborn, you're also just an adventurer who needs to mine ore to make a decent helmet. But the throat of the world is not the only peak that pierces the clouds, nor is it the only one with a guardian. As we slide down the slopes, leaving the solitary peace of Paarthurnax behind, we look to the north. There, rising like a jagged tooth from the snowy wastes, is Shearpoint. Unlike the throat of the world, which is a place of pilgrimage and philosophy, Shearpoint is a place of execution. The climb here is not spiritual, it is tactical. The mountain doesn't want to teach you a lesson, it wants to kill you. Most mountains in Skyrim have a single gimmick: a troll, a shrine, maybe a bandit camp. Shearpoint decides to double down. It is one of the few locations in the game that throws 2 boss-level entities at you simultaneously. This isn't a glitch, it's a trap. As you ascend the northern face, the music changes. The serene ambient track fades, replaced by the chanting drums of dragon combat. You hear the roar before you see the wings. A dragon guards this peak. Depending on your level, it could be a blood dragon, an elder dragon, or even an ancient dragon. It circles the word wall, bathing the snowy peak in fire or frost. Dealing with a dragon on a mountaintop is standard fare for the Dragonborn. You take cover behind rocks, you shout Dragonrend, you chug potions, but Shearpoint has a nasty surprise. As you engage the beast, a sarcophagus bursts open near the word wall. Out steps a dragon priest. This is Krosis. His name, in the dragon tongue, translates to sorrow, and sorrow is exactly what he brings to the underprepared adventurer. Dragon priests are the Lich Kings of ancient Skyrim, rulers who worshipped the dragons as gods and were granted immortality in exchange for their servitude. They float above the ground, masked and terrifying, wielding staves of immense power. Krosis is particularly nasty because he wields a staff of fireballs. Now picture the scene. You're on a narrow, snowy peak with limited cover. Above you, a dragon is strafing the ground with breath attacks. In front of you, a floating undead sorcerer is spamming explosive fireballs that stagger you and drain your health in chunks. The synergy between the two is brutal. The dragon forces you into cover. Krosis blasts you out of it. The dragon keeps you looking up. Krosis attacks you from eye level. It is a double threat that catches many players off guard. You expect one or the other. Finding both feels like the dungeon master decided he was tired of your winning streak. The mask Krosis drops is a prize worth the pain. It boosts lockpicking, archery and alchemy by 20%. This trifecta makes it the ultimate headgear for the stealth archer archetype, the build that 90% of Skyrim players inevitably evolve into, regardless of how they started. It's almost poetic that the mask named Sorrow is the best friend of the silent killer. But let's look closer at the word wall Krosis was guarding. It teaches you all 3 words of the throw voice shout. The words are Zul, voice, May, fool, and gut, far. This shout is hilarious. When used, the Dragonborn whispers an insult that projects to a distant location, distracting enemies. The insults are surprisingly petty for a Thuum. Hey skeever butt, melon nose, hey cheese brain. Consider the contrast. You have just fought a life and death battle against an ancient dragon and a powerful lich priest on a frozen mountaintop. You have survived fire, ice, and explosions. You approach the ancient wall expecting a shout of immense destructive power, something to rend the earth or summon storms. Instead, you learn how to call someone a cheese brain from 30 feet away. This is the humour of the Nords. Even their ancient magic has room for a prank. It suggests that the ancient tongues, for all their grim wars and dragon worship, understood the tactical value of being annoying. The view from Shearpoint is bleak. It overlooks the pale, frozen marshlands of the Pale and the snowy forests of Winterhold. It feels exposed. Unlike the throat of the world, which feels above the world, Shearpoint feels exposed to it. The wind here screams rather than howls. But the mountains of Skyrim are not just about combat and crafting. Some hold echoes of tragedies that have nothing to do with war. Some peaks are stages for stories that ended in silence long before the Dragonborn arrived. Far to the west in the Reach, the mountains change character. They become craggier, rockier, more treacherous. The Reach is a land of vertical extremes, where rivers cut deep canyons through the stone, and overlooking one of these dizzying drops is a location known as Bard's Leap Summit. It's a place that doesn't look like much on the map, just another icon in a sea of Forsworn camps. But if you climb the wooden scaffolding of the Forsworn redoubt nearby, fighting your way through hagravens and briarhearts, You eventually reach a stone precipice that juts out over a massive waterfall. The drop is terrifying. It's easily 100-foot plunge into a pool of water far below. Standing at the edge, looking down, you feel that distinct call of the void. The game design practically dares you. Jump, it whispers, aim for the water. And if you do, if you strip off your heavy armour, metaphorically or literally if you want the immersion, and take that leap of faith, landing safely in the deep pool below, something magical happens. You swim to the surface, gasping for air, the adrenaline of the fall still buzzing in your controller. On the shore, waiting for you, is a ghost. We leave the philosophical heights of the throat of the world and the clever hidden notch of the pickaxe behind. The air is still thin, the wind still biting, but as we turn our gaze northward, the character of the mountains changes. We are moving away from the grey, contemplative stone of the Monaven and toward the jagged, hostile peaks that overlook the Pale. Our destination is Shearpoint. If the throat of the world is a cathedral, Shearpoint is a fortress. It doesn't rise with the majestic, singular slope of the central mountain. It juts out of the earth like a broken tooth, a sharp, angry promontory that seems designed specifically to catch the wind and flay the skin off anyone foolish enough to climb it. The ascent to Shearpoint is rarely a peaceful one. The geography here is deceptive. From the lowlands of the Pale, the snowy, marshy tundra that surrounds the Hall of the Vigilant, Shearpoint looks accessible. A gentle slope, perhaps, a winding path. But as you draw closer, the terrain fights you. The snow is deep, slowing your movement speed. The rocks are slippery, and the wildlife here is particularly aggressive. Ice wraiths, those translucent shards of malice, love to haunt the lower slopes, darting in and out of the blizzard to nip at your stamina. But the true danger of Shearpoint isn't the climb, it's what waits for you at the top. Most peaks in Skyrim have a rhythm. You climb, you fight a few minions, you reach the summit, you get a reward. Shearpoint disrupts this rhythm with violence. It is one of the few locations in the entire game that is designed as a double threat encounter. The developers didn't just place a dragon roost here. They didn't just place a dragon priest sarcophagus here. They placed both, right next to each other, and scripted them to wake up at the same time. As you crest the final ridge, usually panting and low on stamina from the climb, the music shifts. You know the sound, the chanting, percussive roar of the dragon combat track. A shadow sweeps over the snow. You look up, preparing to fight a dragon. Depending on your level, this could be a blood dragon, a frost dragon, or even a revered dragon. It circles, strafing the peak with breath attacks that turn the entire summit into a kill zone. You scramble for cover. You duck behind the few jagged rocks scattered around the word wall, drawing your bow or charging your spells. You think you have the tactical advantage. You think you can play Ring Around the Rosie with the dragon, popping out to shoot and ducking back to heal. And that is when the sarcophagus bursts open. With a sound like cracking ice, the lid is thrown aside and Krosis rises. Krosis is not a Draugr. He is a dragon priest, one of the 8 high-ranking lich lords of the ancient dragon cult. He floats above the snow, his robes tattered but regal, his mask gleaming with a dull bronze light. And he is not happy to see you. This is the moment of panic that defines Shearpoint. You are now fighting a war on 2 fronts. Above you, a dragon is raining fire. At ground level, a lich is hurling explosive fireballs. The synergy is brutal. The dragon forces you to keep moving, flushing you out of cover. Krosis punishes you for being in the open, blasting you with staff attacks that stagger you and drain your health in massive chunks. Core in-game fact: Krosis is unique among the outdoor dragon priests because of his location. Most priests are buried deep inside dungeons, like Ragot or Hevnorak, serving as the final boss after a long crawl. Krosis is out in the fresh air. This gives him a terrifying advantage: mobility. Inside a dungeon, you can corner a priest. On Shearpoint, he has the whole mountain to float around. He can kite you. He can retreat over a ledge where you can't follow, continuing to rain destruction down on your head while you scramble to find a path to him. The name Krosis is a word in the dragon tongue. It translates to sorrow or sorry. It is often used by dragons as a way of expressing pity or regret, but in a condescending way. Krosis, they might say, before incinerating you. It implies that your death is inevitable and tragic, but necessary. Meeting a priest named Sorrow on a peak named Shearpoint is a heavy bit of nomenclature. He is the sorrow of the mountain. Let's talk about the loot, because the reward for surviving this gauntlet is substantial. When Krosis finally disintegrates into a pile of ash, you claim his mask. The mask, also named Krosis, is a piece of light armour. Its enchantment gives a 20% boost to lockpicking, archery and alchemy. This specific combination of stats makes the mask a holy grail for a very specific type of player, the Thief Assassin. It is the ultimate headgear for the stealth archer build that so many of us inevitably drift into. It supports the 3 pillars of the rogue lifestyle: shooting things from far away, breaking into places you shouldn't be, and poisoning your enemies. Finding this mask on a snowy peak, guarded by a dragon, feels like a strange juxtaposition. You expect heavy armour or destruction magic bonuses from such a violent encounter. Instead, you get a mask that encourages subtlety. But the secrets of Shearpoint go deeper than the mask. We must look at the word wall itself. The wall here is ancient, weathered by centuries of wind that screams off the sea of ghosts. The words etched into the stone glow with that familiar power. You approach, absorbing the knowledge of the ancients. And what power do you learn? Do you learn to summon a storm, to slow time, to breathe fire? No. You learn throw voice. The words Azul, voice, May, fool, and gut, far. This shout is, frankly, hilarious. When used, the Dragonborn whispers an insult that is projected to a specific point in the distance. The goal is to distract enemies, making them investigate the sound so you can sneak past or backstab them. But the insults aren't the thundering proclamations of a god. They are playground taunts. Hey skeever butt, melon nose, hey cheesebrain, hey trollbait, consider the contrast. You have just fought one of the hardest open-world battles in the game. You have slain a dragon and a lich. You're standing on a peak surrounded by the corpses of the powerful, and your reward is the magical ability to call someone a cheesebrain from 30 feet away. This is a piece of obscure lore that speaks to the nature of the ancient Nords. We tend to think of the dragon cult as grim, humorless tyrants, and they were. But the existence of this shout suggests that the tongues, the masters of the voice, understood the tactical value of trickery. They weren't just berserkers, they were hunters. They knew that sometimes the best way to kill an enemy wasn't to shout them apart, but to make them look the other way. There is also a fan theory regarding Krosis and this specific wall. Why was a dragon priest of his stature guarding a wall that teaches a trickster shout? Some lore scholars speculate that Krosis was the spy master, or the assassin of the dragon cult. His mask supports this: archery, alchemy, lockpicking. His shout supports this: distraction. While other priests ruled cities or led armies, Krosis might have been the one in the shadows, the one who removed problems before they started. His post on Shearpoint, a remote and exposed peak, might have been a watchtower, a place where he could observe the movements of the rebellion below. The view from Shearpoint supports this theory. It commands a strategic dominance over the northern hold of the Pale. To the west you can see the ruins of Labyrinthian, to the east the snowy forest toward Windhelm. It is a perfect lookout post. Fighting Krosis can lead to some strange emergent gameplay moments. Because of the steep slopes, it is entirely possible to shout Krosis off the mountain. If you hit him with unrelenting force at the right angle, he goes flying. This solves the immediate problem of him killing you, but it creates a new problem. Where is the body? Many an adventurer has spent hours searching the snowy foothills below Shearpoint, trying to find the ash pile that contains the mask. The physics engine of Skyrim is a cruel mistress. Sometimes Krosis slides all the way down to the lowlands, ending up near a giant camp or a mud crab. It turns the epic battle into a scavenger hunt. As the adrenaline fades and you stand alone on the windswept ridge, the reality of the location sets in. Shearpoint is desolate. There are no trees here, only rock and ice. The wind howls with a particular ferocity, unimpeded by any natural barriers. It is a place that feels hostile to life. And yet, there is a beauty to it. The isolation is absolute. Unlike the throat of the world, which feels connected to the history of the Greybeards and the path of the pilgrim, Shearpoint feels wild. It belongs to the dragons. Even with the priest dead and the dragon slain, you feel like an intruder. You're standing in a nest. The sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting the snow in shades of pink and violet. The aurora borealis might flicker into existence overhead, dancing above the corpse of the dragon. It is a quintessential Skyrim moment, violence and beauty wrapped in silence. But we cannot stay here. The cold is seeping into our bones, and the wind is picking up. We have claimed the mask of sorrow, we have learned the words of the fool, and we have survived the double threat. It is time to descend. Our journey continues to the west, leaving the snowy tundra of the Pale for the craggy vertical stone of the Reach. We are trading the open, exposed slopes for a landscape of canyons and cliffs. We are heading toward a peak that holds a secret not of war but of art, a place where a ghost waits for an audience. We leave the biting winds of the Pale behind, trading the open, snowy tundras for a landscape that is far more claustrophobic and vertical. We are heading west, into the jagged, stone-choked heart of the Reach. This is a land of crags, canyons, and ancient twisted juniper trees clinging to life on the edge of precipices. The mountains here don't just roll, they jut. They are sharp, angry spikes of rock that seem to resent the very presence of the sky. Our destination is not a single peak in the traditional sense, but a specific, terrifying promontory known as Bard's Leap Summit. To get there, however, we must navigate one of the most complex and hostile environments in Skyrim, Lost Valley Redoubt. Most mountain climbs in this province involve fighting wolves or the occasional troll, but the ascent to Bard's Leap is a war of attrition against an entire culture. The Reach belongs to the Forsworn, and Lost Valley Redoubt is one of their greatest strongholds. It is a massive, open-air fortress built into the tiered waterfalls of the River Karth. As you approach from the valley floor, you can hear the drums. The rhythmic, primal pounding echoes off the canyon walls, setting a pace for the violence to come. The climb is a vertical dungeon crawl. You fight your way up wooden scaffolding lashed together with leather and hate. You dodge arrows tipped with flint and magic cast by shamans who worship the old spirits of the rock. It is a grueling, bloody ascent. You are fighting gravity and fanatics simultaneously. As you near the top, the roar of the water becomes deafening. You are climbing alongside a massive waterfall, the mist soaking your armour, making the wooden walkways slick and treacherous. At the very pinnacle, you often stumble upon a grisly scene. 2 hag-ravens performing a ritual on a forsworn warrior, replacing his heart with a briar seed. It is a reminder that the magic of the Reach is visceral, bloody, and deeply connected to the earth. But once the hag-ravens are dead and the briar heart is silenced, you are left alone at the summit. And that is when you see it. Jutting out over the waterfall is a simple stone plank. It looks like a diving board carved by nature, or perhaps shaped by ancient hands for a purpose long forgotten. This is the leap. Standing at the edge of that stone looking down triggers a very specific primal sensation. The French call it l'appel du vide, the call of the void. The drop is massive. It is easily 100 feet or more straight down into a deep turquoise pool at the base of the falls. The water churns below, white foam masking the depth. The game design here is brilliant in its silence. There is no quest marker telling you to jump. There is no pop-up tutorial explaining the physics of falling damage. There is just the plank, the drop, and your own curiosity. The environment dares you. Do it, the mountain whispers. See what happens. And because we are adventurers, because we are the Dragonborn, and because we have the quick save button, we jump. The fall takes long enough for you to regret it. The wind rushes past your ears, drowning out the ambient music. The stomach-dropping sensation is surprisingly effective for a video game. You plummet past the cascading water, a tiny speck of metal and flesh falling through the mist. If you aimed correctly and didn't clip a rock on the way down, you hit the water with a massive splash. The screen goes dark for a split second as you submerge, the roar of the falls turning into a muffled underwater hum. You swim to the surface, gasping for air, adrenaline buzzing in your controller. You drag yourself onto the rocky shore, shaking the water from your boots, feeling that rush of survival. You expect nothing more than the satisfaction of the stunt. But then you hear music. Sitting on the edge of the water, perched on a rock like a damp spectre, is a ghost. This is Azadal. He's not a hostile spirit. He doesn't draw a spectral sword or scream in rage. He is playing a lute. The gentle, melancholic strumming cuts through the noise of the waterfall, creating a pocket of surreal calm. If you approach him, he stops playing and speaks. His voice is hollow, echoing with the distance of the grave, but his tone is friendly, almost admiring. "I tried it once, you know," he says, looking up at the summit you just descended from. "But I failed." It is a core in-game fact that this interaction is unique. Azadal is one of the only ghosts in the game who appears solely to acknowledge a feat of athleticism. He isn't a quest giver, he isn't a boss, he is a fellow jumper who didn't stick the landing. He watched you fall, saw you survive, and appeared simply to say, "Nice one." After his brief dialogue, he plays a short, haunting melody, a final performance for an audience of one. As the notes fade, a notification appears in the corner of your screen. Speech increased. You gain 2 points in the speech skill. This reward is fascinating. Why speech? Why not acrobatics, if it still existed, or light armour? It implies that the act of the leap was a form of expression. It was a performance. You communicated something to the mountain and to the spirit of the bard, courage, style, and a disregard for mortality. In the world of the bards, a grand gesture speaks louder than words. The obscure lore surrounding Azadal is sparse, which makes him all the more intriguing. His name, Azadal, sounds Redguard in origin, suggesting he might have travelled far to reach this spot. Why choose this specific waterfall? Some lore scholars suggest that Bard's Leap Summit was an ancient initiation site for the Skalds of the Reach, or perhaps a testing ground for students of the Bard's College in Solitude who wanted to prove they had the heart of a poet. In Nordic culture, poetry and death are often intertwined, the idea that a life should be lived loudly and end dramatically. Azadal sought to make his death, or his life, a song. He failed the physical test but lingered as a spirit, waiting for someone to complete the verse he couldn't finish. There is also a darker interpretation. The Reach is a land of blood magic. The Hag-Ravens at the top were performing a ritual of transformation. Perhaps Azadal wasn't jumping for fun. Perhaps he was fleeing. Maybe he was a prisoner of the Forsworn, cornered on the precipice, and chose the fall over the Briarheart ritual. His failure wasn't a missed jump, but a failure to escape the influence of the redoubt. His ghost remains, tethered to the spot where his escape attempt ended. The community, however, has taken Bard's Leap and turned it into a competitive sport. Search for Skyrim Bard's Leap online, and you will find compilations of players doing the most absurd things off that plank. Jumping while on a horse, jumping while paralysed, jumping while over-encumbered. There is a fan theory, more of a fan practice, that the correct way to do the jump is to use the become ethereal shout right before you hit the ground. This negates the damage, but some purists argue it cheats the spirit of Azadal. He died because he was mortal. Surviving by using dragon magic to turn into a ghost yourself feels like mocking him. The true Bard's Leap, according to the community, must be done in plain armour, accepting the risk of the physics engine glitching and killing you instantly upon impact. It is a leap of faith in the stability of the game code as much as the character's survival. There is another layer of environmental storytelling here that is easy to miss. If you look at the bottom of the pool where you land, you don't find Azadal's body. It has long since washed away or decomposed. But you do find chests and loot scattered around the water's edge, implying that Azadal wasn't the only one who tried. He's just the only one who stuck around to talk about it. The atmosphere at the bottom of the ravine is distinct from the top. Up there, it was wind, drums, and battle. Down here, it is mist, water, and music. It feels like a hidden sanctuary. The aggression of the Forsworn doesn't reach down here. You're in the splash zone, a neutral territory sanctified by the ghost's song. As Azadal finishes his song, he doesn't walk away. He simply fades. He dissolves into the mist of the waterfall, returning to the current. You are left alone again, wet, slightly richer in experience, standing in a canyon that feels suddenly very empty. The climb back out is a long one. You can't fast travel from the bottom of a ravine easily. You have to walk. And as you walk, the sound of the lute lingers in your mind. A reminder that in Skyrim, the mountains remember everything. They remember the dragons, they remember the wars, and they remember the bard who thought he could fly. But the Reach has more secrets than just jumping ghosts. As we dry off and climb out of the canyon, navigating the treacherous, crags back toward the central mountain ranges, we turn our eyes south. We're heading toward a place where the mountains don't just hold ghosts, they hold puzzles. We are going to a place that mapmakers seem to have drawn with a trembling hand, a place of confusing geometry and endless undead. We are heading to the border of the rift, to a ruin that sits open to the sky, exposed to the elements, and waiting to confuse us. We are going to Arkwind Point. Leaving the mist-soaked ravine of Bard's Leap, we trek back across the breadth of Skyrim, heading south and east. We return to the rift, that land of eternal autumn, where the aspens burn gold against the grey sky. But we are not here for the scenery. We are here for a headache. We are heading to the mountains south of Ivarstead, to a location that has caused more navigational rage quits than perhaps any other spot on the map. We are going to Arkwind Point. If you have ever tried to find this place based solely on the quest marker, you know the pain. The map shows it clearly, a little icon nestled in the peaks. So, you do what any logical adventurer does. You go to the base of the mountain and start climbing. You jump up rocks, you slide down slopes, you mash the Y button, or spacebar, until your thumb goes numb, and you get nowhere. The marker taunts you. It hovers in a grey void of unnavigable terrain. You're on one side of the cliff. The destination is on the other, separated by a vertical wall of you shall not pass geometry. Arkwind Point is the ultimate test of pathfinding. To reach it, you often have to go through a completely different location, usually the Rift Watchtower, or find a hidden winding trail that starts miles away from where you think it should. It is a place that demands you stop looking at the compass and start looking at the land. When you finally breach the perimeter and the location discovery sound chimes, you aren't greeted by a door. Most dungeons in Skyrim are holes in the ground. You enter, a loading screen happens, and you're in an interior cell. Arkwind Point is different. It is an exterior dungeon. It is a massive sprawling complex of stone ruins, arches and towers that sits entirely open to the sky. The scale of Arkwind is unsettling. It feels too big. The walkways are wide enough for giants. The towers pierce the clouds, and because there is no roof, the weather is a constant combatant. If it's snowing in the rift, it's blizzarding in Arkwind. If it's foggy, you can't see the archer sniping you from the bridge 300 feet away. The desolate puzzle of our title refers not to a lever you pull or a claw you rotate, but to the layout itself. The ruins are arranged in a chaotic, tiered semicircle. It looks like a fortress that exploded in slow motion and then froze. Navigating it requires a constant series of ascents and descents, fighting your way through layers of resistance, and the resistance here is elite. Arkwind Point is one of the few places in the base game that reliably spawns high-tier undead in the overworld. We aren't talking about the shambling naked Draugr you fight in Bleakfall's Barrow. We are talking about Draugr Deathlords, the ones with the ebony helmets and the shouts. They stand on the high walls silhouetted against the moon, fussrodaying you off the narrow bridges into the abyss below. But the Draugr are just the infantry. Arkwind Point almost always has air support. A dragon roosts here. Because of the open layout, the dragon has free rein to strafe the entire complex. It dives between the ruined towers, bathing the stone walkways in fire. You're fighting a vertical war against the dead while dodging napalm from the sky. It is a chaotic, messy, beautiful battlefield. At the very back of the complex, nestled in the highest tier of the ruins, is the prize, a word wall. It sits in a curved amphitheatre of stone, guarded by a levelled boss, usually a dragon priest or a particularly nasty death overlord rising from a sarcophagus. You fight your way to the wall. You defeat the guardian. You approach the glowing text, the chanting of the ancients filling your headphones. You learn the word for the shout Drain Vitality. Here is where the core in-game fact meets the obscure lore and a bit of meta-lore. The Drain Vitality shout you learn here, specifically the word Garn, stamina, is notorious. In the original release of the game, and even in many patched versions, this specific word wall was bugged. If you learned the word here before learning the other words of the shout from the Dawnguard DLC, it would often glitch your shout menu. You might end up with two versions of Drain Vitality, or even stranger, it would glitch the Marked for Death shout, creating a duplicate entry that didn't work. For years, Arkwind Point was known not for its lore, but for being the place that cursed your inventory. The community calls this the Arkwind glitch. It's a piece of meta-lore that has become inseparable from the location. The mountain doesn't just drain your character's vitality, it drains your UI stability. It's as if the ancient magic here is so old and corrupted, that it breaks the fourth wall and infects the game code itself. But look beyond the bugs, and you find a fascinating piece of environmental storytelling. What was Arkwind Point? The architecture is Nordic, but it's wrong. It's too scattered. There are elements of the dragon cult here, clearly, but there are also towers that look like watchposts. Some fan theories suggest that Arkwind Point was a testing ground. The name Arkwind implies a mastery of the air. Perhaps this was an arena where the ancient tongues practiced their shouts against the dragons, or where the dragon priest tested new darker magics. The shout found here, Drain Vitality, is inherently parasitic. It siphons magical energy, stamina, and health from the victim. It is a cruel magic. Unlike Unrelenting Force, which is just raw power, or Fire Breath, which is elemental, Drain Vitality is necromantic in nature. Finding it here in this frozen, windswept ruin suggests that whoever built Arkwind was experimenting with powers that sapped the life out of the world. There is also a connection to the Dawnguard DLC, often the quest, Lost to the Ages, which involves finding ethereal shards to forge a unique Dwemer artifact. We'll send you here. One of the shards can spawn in a chest at the top of the tower. This is a cruel joke by the developers. To get a Dwemer item, they send you to the most hostile Nordic ruin on the map. It forces a collision of aesthetics. You are hunting for steampunk gears in a graveyard of Vikings. The atmosphere of Arkwind is arguably the bleakest in the game. It feels abandoned in a way other ruins don't. Most barrows feel like tombs that are resting. Arkwind feels like a city that was evacuated. The wind whistles through the empty arches with a specific hollow sound. There are no torches lit here unless you light them, or unless a Draugr is holding one. It is dark, cold, and hostile. Standing at the word wall looking back over the complex, you can see the layout properly. It spirals downward. This shape, a spiral, is significant in Nord symbolism. It represents the cycle of time, the Kalpa. But Arkwind's spiral is broken, shattered by the collapse of the towers. It's a symbol of a cycle that failed. The desolate puzzle isn't solved by finding the exit. It's solved by surviving the experience. The reward isn't the shout, especially if it glitches. The reward is the view from the top of the watchtower. From here, you can see all the way to the throat of the world in the north. You realise that you are standing on a sister peak, a dark reflection of High Hrothgar. Where High Hrothgar is maintained, peaceful and inhabited by monks, Arkwind Point is ruined, violent and inhabited by monsters. They are two sides of the same coin, the way of the voice used for peace and the way of the voice used for war. As you begin the descent, which is usually just jumping off a ledge and hoping you have enough health to tank the fall, because walking back down is too tedious, you feel a sense of relief to be leaving. Arkwind Point is not a place you want to linger, it drains you. The wind screams as you leave the ruins behind, the sound of the Draugr fading into the blizzard. You check your map, you check your shout menu to make sure it's not broken. You eat a sweet roll to comfort yourself. We have survived the open-air hell of the Rift, but our journey is far from over. We must now travel north and west to the hold of Hafengar. The mountains there are sharp and overlook the sea. They are the domain of a Daedric prince who claims to hate the undead, yet her temple is filled with them. We're going to a mountain that acts as a beacon, a literal beacon. And yes, you know the line. We are going to Mount Kilkreath. From the chaotic, wind-battered ruins of the Rift, we travel diagonally across the province to the northwest. We leave behind the golden aspens and the crumbling masonry of Arkwind Point for a landscape that is sharper, colder, and steeped in the salt spray of the Sea of Ghosts. We are entering the hold of Hafengar, the seat of the High King, dominated by the Stone Arch of Solitude. But our eyes are not on the city, they are on the mountain range that creates the spine of this peninsula. Dominating the skyline near the Dragon Bridge is Mount Kilkreath. It is not the highest peak in Skyrim, but it is certainly the brightest. Perched atop its summit is a statue that defies the usual Nordic aesthetic of heavy stone and grim faces. It is a figure of a woman, arms outstretched, wings unfurled, holding a sphere of pure light. This is the shrine of Meridia, the Daedric prince of life and infinite energies. And if you have played Skyrim for more than 5 hours, you have likely heard her voice. Let's be honest. There is a collective trauma shared by the entire player base regarding this mountain. You're minding your own business, looting a random chest in a bandit cave, perhaps looking for a few gold coins or a potion. You spot a unique, geometric sphere. You pick it up, and then at maximum volume, echoing inside your skull like a divine megaphone. A new hand touches the beacon. It is the audio jump scare that launched 1,000 memes, but once your ears stop ringing, the quest draws you here to Mount Kilkreath. Meridia is angry. Her temple, carved deep into the roots of the mountain beneath her statue, has been seized. A darkness has taken root in her beacon of light. The climb up Kilkreath is deceptive. It starts as a gentle roadside hike just off the main road to Solitude. The path is paved, suggesting that in ancient times this was a major pilgrimage site. But as you ascend, the air grows colder. The shadow of the statue looms over you. When you place the beacon on the gem pedestal, you are not greeted with a warm welcome. Meridia is not a benevolent mother figure. She's a cold, unyielding force of order. She demands you enter the mountain and cleanse it. Entering the Kilkreath ruins, you expect the usual dank, dark Nordic tomb. And while the architecture is familiar, the atmosphere is uniquely unsettling. The darkness here feels heavy, unnatural. It isn't just the absence of light, it is the presence of a void. Your enemy here is Malkoran. He's a powerful necromancer who has set up shop in the temple's inner sanctum. But Malkoran isn't just raising the dead in the traditional sense. He isn't animating bones with frost magic or stitching together flesh astronks. He is twisting the souls of the war dead. The Civil War has been good for Malkoran's business. The bodies of Stormcloaks and Imperials drift down the rivers or are left in shallow graves, and he harvests them. Inside the temple, you encounter corrupted shades. Core in-game fact: these enemies are unique to this dungeon. They are not the translucent blue ghosts you fight elsewhere. They are black, smoky silhouettes, shadows given physical form. They retain the shape of the soldiers they once were. You can see the outline of Imperial helmets or Stormcloak armour, but their humanity has been stripped away, replaced by a hungry, aggressive darkness. They are silent, fast, and swarm you in the narrow corridors. The mechanic of this mountain climb is guiding the light. Meridia sends a beam of pure starlight down from the summit into the depths of the ruin. Your job is to activate a series of crystal pedestals to refract and reflect this beam, bouncing it through the temple like a high-stakes game of laser tag. There is something deeply satisfying about this puzzle. As the beam hits a crystal, it burns away the supernatural fog. It creates a safe zone of blinding white light. Standing in the beam often heals you, or at least feels like it should, while the shadows recoil. It is a visual representation of the battle between the mountain's true owner and the parasite living in its gut. But let's delve into the obscure lore. Who is Meridia, really? She is classified as a Daedric prince, which usually implies evil, or at least chaotic to the layman. But Meridia is different. She was once one of the Magna G, the star orphans who fled Mundus during the moment of creation, tearing holes in the sky that became the stars. Meridia, however, was cast down. She was exiled from Aetherius for consorting with illicit spectra. Basically, she played with the wrong kind of light. She fell to the void, but she carved out her own realm, the Coloured Rooms. This makes her an outsider even among the Daedra. She hates the undead with a burning passion, because they are a violation of the natural flow of energy. They are life that is static, broken, and wrong. The irony, of course, is that Meridia denies free will just as much as Molag Bal does. She refers to her champions as instruments. She cleanses the temple not because she cares about the sanctity of the dead, but because the darkness is an insult to her property rights. She is the landlord of the mountain, and she is evicting a squatter. Deep in the catacombs, you finally confront the squatter, Malkoran. This boss fight is a notorious difficulty spike for unprepared players. Malkoran waits in the final chamber, bathed in shadow. He wields powerful destruction magic, specifically Ice Storm, a spell that creates a slow-moving whirlwind of frost. The nasty thing about Ice Storm is that it clips through walls and pillars. You can't just hide behind a rock. The cold will find you. But the real surprise comes after you kill him. You burn his health bar down, he collapses, and you think the fight is over. You start moving toward the loot, and then his shadow stands up. Malkoran's Shade is a second phase to the boss fight that catches almost everyone off guard the first time. It is a darker, more powerful version of the corrupted shades you've been fighting. It flies, it spams magic, and it has a significant health pool. This leads to a fascinating fan theory. What was Malkuran actually doing? A standard necromancer raises other people. Malkuran seems to have been preparing to raise himself. The Shade isn't just a ghost, it's a lich-like state that bypasses the traditional dragon priest rituals. Some fans speculate that Malkuran was using Meridia's own temple as a battery. He was siphoning the infinite energies of the prince to fuel a new form of immortality. He was trying to become a being of pure shadow, to rival Meridia's being of pure light. The audacity is impressive. He didn't just hide in a cave, he hid under the nose of a god and stole her power. When the Shade is finally banished and the room falls silent, you retrieve the prize, Dawnbreaker. This unique one-handed sword is a beauty. It has a glowing crystal in the hilt that emits actual light, useful in dark dungeons. Its enchantment burns enemies, and if you kill an undead creature, there is a chance it will trigger a massive fiery explosion that turns nearby undead to ash. It is the ultimate paladin weapon. However, a word of warning to our vampire listeners: if you are playing as a vampire, Dawnbreaker hates you. The explosion hits all undead, and the game classifies the vampire player as undead. You can literally blow yourself up with your own reward. Meridia does not make exceptions. But the mountain has one final surprise. As you claim the sword, you are not asked to walk out. Meridia decides to expedite your exit. The screen fades to white. When it fades back in, you are falling, but not down. You are being lifted. Meridia pulls you out of the dungeon and levitates you high into the stratosphere above Mount Kilkreath. This sequence is breathtaking. You are hundreds of feet in the air, looking down at the statue, the mountain, the marshy delta of solitude, and the distant blue palace. Meridia speaks to you directly, her voice booming from everywhere and nowhere. She designates you her champion. She tasks you with wielding the Dawnbreaker in her name. It is a moment of pure power fantasy. You are floating face to face with a Daedric prince. But because this is a Bethesda game, it is also a moment of terror. There is a well-known glitch where, after Meridia finishes her speech, she drops you. And sometimes, the game forgets to turn off the falling damage toggle. You plummet from the stratosphere, flailing wildly, and splatter onto the rocks next to the statue. It is a hilarious, tragic end to a holy quest. 1 minute you are the chosen warrior of the light, the next you are a physics ragdoll. Assuming you survive the drop, or the gentle landing the game intended, you stand once again at the base of the statue. You hold a sword that glows with the light of the stars. You have cleansed the mountain. Mount Kilkreath stands as a beacon of order in a chaotic world. It reminds us that not all mountains are wild places. Some are claimed. Some are battlegrounds for forces far older than the Empire or the Stormcloaks. But as we sheath Dawnbreaker and turn away from the light, we must prepare for a very different kind of descent. We are leaving the open skies of Haerfingr and heading east, to the Velothi Mountains that border Morrowind. We're going to a place that doesn't want to lift us up. It wants to swallow us whole. We're going to a Dwemer ruin that hides one of the most terrifying traps in the entire game. A place where the mountain opens its mouth and drops you into the dark. We're going to Kagrenzel. Section 7. We leave the blinding holy light of Meridia and the western coast behind. We travel east now, traversing the breadth of the province until we hit the wall of rock that separates Skyrim from Morrowind. These are the Velothi Mountains, a range that feels older, harder and less forgiving than the central peaks. The air here is thin and carries the metallic scent of impending snow. Our destination is a location that appears on the map as a simple ruin, tucked away in a high-altitude crag north of Riften and east of Anselvund. It is called Kagrenzel. To reach it, you have to leave the road. You have to climb blindly, navigating steep slopes where the physics engine fights you every step of the way. There is no clear path. The mountain seems to want to keep this place hidden. When you finally crest the ridge, expecting a sprawling fortress or a grand temple, you find a shed. Well, not a shed exactly. It is a small, domed Dwemer structure half buried in the snow. It is unassuming. There are no bandits camping outside. There are no towering centurions guarding the door. It sits in silence, a metal blister on the skin of the mountain. You enter. Inside, the sense of wrongness intensifies. Most Dwemer ruins are sprawling complexes of steam pipes, gears, and brass corridors. Kagrenzel opens into a single medium-sized room. In the centre of the room, there is a pedestal. Floating above the pedestal is a glowing strange orb. It invites you. It begs to be touched. And because we are adventurers who have never met a button we didn't want to push, we touch it. Immediate regret follows. A metal cage springs up from the floor, trapping you around the pedestal. You are locked in. Then, the sounds begin. Strange, dissonant chimes echo through the room. Ting, hum, ting. The floor begins to vibrate. You spin around, looking for a lever, a key, an enemy. The chimes get louder. They aren't melodic. They are mathematical, piercing. You wait for a hidden door to slide open in the wall. You wait for the cage to lower. Instead, the floor vanishes. This isn't a trapdoor. This is the entire floor of the room retracting in an instant. You fall, and you keep falling, and you keep falling. Kagrenzel is not a ruin, it is a throat. It is the mountain opening its mouth to swallow you whole. The drop is terrifyingly long. In terms of game physics, you are in freefall for several full seconds. The wind rushes past your ears, drowning out the chimes. The darkness swallows the light of the room above. You have enough time to panic, to accept your death, to wonder if you saved recently, and then to panic again. This is the mountain that swallows you. It subverts the entire concept of mountain climbing. You spent 20 minutes fighting gravity to get up here, and the mountain uses gravity to punish you for it. Miraculously, you do not splatter. You hit water. You plunge into a deep subterranean lake, the impact jarring the camera. You swim to the surface, gasping, disoriented. You look up. Far, far above, a tiny pinprick of light marks the room you fell from. You're thousands of feet underground. You've been dropped into the upper reaches of the Stony Creek cave system, a massive natural cavern that the Dwemer barely touched. You're now in the digestive tract of the Velothi Mountains. Kagrenzel is one of the most strictly linear dungeons in the game, but vertically. Once you fall, there is no way back up. You cannot climb the wet walls, you cannot levitate. The game forces you to move forward, deeper into the earth. It is a point of no return that transitions you from a mountain biome to a farmer cave biome seamlessly, without a loading screen between the drop and the lake. The layout of the cavern below is stunning. It is illuminated by the soft alien glow of bioluminescent mushrooms and the shimmering chitin of farmer tents. You're not alone down here. The blind betrayers have built a hive in the darkness and you have just dropped in for dinner. But let's pause and look at the obscure lore of the structure itself. The name Kagrenzel is Dwemerous. We can break it down. Kagren relates to music or sound, similar to Kagrenac, the tonal architect, and Zel usually means city or place. So Kagrenzel roughly translates to music city or place of sound. This seems ironic given the lack of a city. But the music part is key. The Dwemer did not use magic in the traditional sense. They used tonal architecture. They manipulated the song of reality to alter the physical world. The chimes you heard before the floor opened weren't just a sound effect, they were the mechanism. The orb was a tonal resonator. When you touched it, it emitted a specific frequency that told the stone floor to stop being a floor. This leads to a fascinating community debate and fan theory. What was the purpose of Kagrenzel? One theory suggests it was a sorting machine. The Dwemer were obsessed with logic and race. Perhaps the orb scans the person touching it. If the tonal resonance matches a Dwemer, the cage lowers and a door opens to a hidden city that we never see. If the resonance does not match, if it detects a Nord, or an elf, or a man, it engages the disposal protocol. You're trash, and you were just flushed. Another darker theory suggests it was a place of execution or sacrifice. The fall is long enough to be terrifying, but the water at the bottom ensures survival. Initially. Why save the victim? Perhaps so the farmer, or whatever creatures the Dwemer kept down there, could feed. It wasn't a quick death. It was a feeding chute for the pets in the basement. Or perhaps it was a geological probe. The Dwemer were constantly seeking Ethereum and rare minerals. Kagrenzel might have been a massive vertical borehole drilled into the mountain to survey the rock layers. The trap mechanism is just a safety feature to prevent local wildlife from nesting in their expensive scientific equipment. Regardless of its original purpose, the experience of surviving Kagrenzel is harrowing. You are wet, lost, and surrounded by high-level falmer. The path winds downward, following the flow of an underground river. You fight your way through the darkness, relying on the glowing mushrooms to see. Midway through the descent, you might find a strange, massive skeleton embedded in the rock. It looks like the ribcage of a whale, but you're miles from the sea and deep underground. It suggests that this cavern was once underwater, or that things live in the deep earth that we have no names for. Eventually, the cave narrows. You see daylight ahead, a different kind of light than the electrical glow of the Dwemer orb. You emerge into the lower section of Stony Creek Cave. You fight a few bandits who are camping near the entrance, completely unaware that a dragonborn just fell from the sky into the cave behind them. When you finally step out into the open air of Eastmarch, you are disoriented. You look at your map. You are miles away from where you entered Kagrenzel. You have traversed the mountain not by going over it, but by going through it. You look back up at the peaks of the Velothi range. They look silent, majestic, but now you know the truth. They are hollow. They are honeycombed with tubes and traps left by a dead race that treated the earth like a machine. The secret of Kagrenzel is the scale of the Dwemer's ambition. They didn't just build cities, they modified the geography. They turned a mountain into a loaded gun pointed at the intruder. The climb was hard, the fall was terrifying, but the survival feels earned. You shake the cave dust from your cloak and check your gear. The sun is setting over the hot springs of Eastmarch, casting a golden light on the steam vents, but we cannot rest. The mountains of the mainland have shown us their traps. Now, we must look to the islands. We must look to a place where the mountains are not made of granite and limestone, but of ash and basalt. A place where the wind screams with the voice of a dead god. We're travelling north, across the Sea of Ghosts to the island of Solstheim. We're heading for the highest point on that ash-choked rock, a peak that holds a tomb, an axe, and a political dispute that has lasted for generations. We are going to Fright Peak. We leave the mainland of Skyrim behind. We turn our backs on the pine forests of the Rift and the hot springs of Eastmarch, boarding the boat at Windhelm to cross the churning grey waters of the Sea of Ghosts. Our destination is Solstheim. As the island comes into view, the colour palette shifts. The cool blues and whites of Skyrim are replaced by the bruised purples, dusty browns, and charcoal greys of the Dunmer aesthetic. Solstheim is a land in crisis, caught between two biomes. The southern half is choked by the ash of the Red Mountain, while the northern half remains locked in the eternal ice of the Mösring Mountains. It is to this northern ice that we head. We are seeking the roof of the island, the highest point of jagged geography on this isolated rock. We are climbing Fright Peak. Fright Peak is not a friendly climb. While the throat of the world has steps, and the pilgrimage paths are well trodden, Fright is wild. It rises from the glaciers like a spearhead. To reach it, you must navigate the vertical wilderness north of the Skarl village, fighting your way through packs of snow wolves and the occasional werebear, creatures that hit harder and move faster than their mainland cousins. The wind here carries a specific texture. It is not just cold, it is gritty. Even in the snowfields, the ash from the volcano to the south drifts on the breeze, coating the ice in a fine grey layer. It creates a stark, high-contrast landscape that feels alien, hostile, and incredibly old. Our destination atop this peak is not a dragon roost, nor a Dwemer trap. It is a tomb. But it is a tomb that serves a very specific living purpose. We are standing before the entrance to Hrothmund's Barrow. This location is central to one of the most culturally rich quests in the Dragonborn DLC. It ties back to the history of Thirskmead Hall, a legendary structure located down in the valley. Thirsk was founded by Hrothmund the Red, a Nord chieftain of immense strength and charisma. When he died, he wasn't buried in a sprawling catacomb filled with traps. He was buried here, high in the mountains, in a barrow that consists of a single, flooded chamber. The barrow is unique because it acts as a constitutional court for the local Nords. According to tradition, the chieftain of Thirsk must prove their worthiness at Hrothmund's tomb. It is the sword in the stone myth, but reimagined with Nord brutality. Core in-game fact. Most players encounter this location during the quest, Retaking Thirsk. You find the Mead Hall occupied by Reeklings, those small, goblin-like blue creatures that speak in grunts and throw spears. The Nords, led by Bujold the Unworthy, have been kicked out. They are camping on the beach, humiliated. Bujold asks for your help to retake the hall. If you help her, and let's be honest, many players choose the Reeklings because having a goblin army is hilarious, but for the sake of lore, let's stick with the Nords. You clear the hall, but the victory is hollow. Bujold is plagued by doubt. Her nickname, the Unworthy, isn't just an insult, it's a haunting. She needs to clear her name. She asks you to accompany her up the mountain to Hrothmund's Barrow to seek the blessing of the Founder. The climb with Bujold is somber. There is no banter about the weather. She is walking to her judgment. When you enter the Barrow, the atmosphere is heavy. The water in the chamber is dark and still. At the far end, illuminated by a shaft of light cutting through the ice, is Hrothmund's axe. It is a massive two-handed battle axe, embedded deep into the stone of a sarcophagus. It looks powerful. It looks lootable. Every instinct in your gamer brain says, I am going to take that. But you can't. The axe of Hrothmund is a permanent fixture of the world. You can grab the handle, you can pull, but it will not budge. The game doesn't give you a prompt to take it. It is a symbol, not a weapon. Then, the supernatural element kicks in. The spirit of Hrothmund speaks. He does not manifest as a ghostly figure fighting you. He is a disembodied voice, booming from the axe itself. And he is not in a good mood. Bujold asks for his blessing. She claims she has retaken the hall and restored honour to the clan. Hrothmund listens, and then he delivers his verdict. He confirms that yes, she is indeed unworthy. He points out that she allowed the hall to fall in the first place, and that she needed an outsider, you, to win it back for her. The leadership of Thirsk is not a birthright, the spirit rumbles. It is earned by blood and strength. This moment deconstructs the typical ancestor worship trope found in fantasy. Usually the spirits of the past are helpful guides or benevolent quest givers. Hrothmund is a harsh critic. He represents the unforgiving nature of Solstheim itself. Weakness is not tolerated here. The mountain doesn't care if you tried your best. It cares if you survived. The obscure lore here connects to the legacy of the Blood Moon expansion from the Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind. Hrothmund and Thirsk have been part of the lore for over a decade. In Morrowind, the player could actually become the chieftain of Thirsk after Hrothmund's death, or rather, after the death of his successor. Returning here in Skyrim and seeing the hall in disarray feels like returning to a childhood home that has fallen into ruin. It adds a layer of generational melancholy to the climb. There is also a fascinating detail about the axe itself. If you use console commands or dig into the creation kit, you can find that Hrothmund's axe is a unique item with its own ID. It is fully modelled. The developers built a legendary weapon and then deliberately glued it to a rock so you couldn't have it. It is a tease. It is the game saying, not everything belongs to you, Dragonborn. The fan debate surrounding this quest is surprisingly heated. It centres on the choice. Do you support Bujold's lie? After Hrothmund rejects her, Bujold asks you to lie for her. She wants to go back to the hall and tell the others that the spirit blessed her. She argues that the clan needs stability, not a leadership crisis. Who are we to question the living for the sake of the dead, she asks. Players are torn. On one hand, she is a liar and a weak leader. Hrothmund was right. On the other hand, Hrothmund is a dead ghost with outdated standards, and Bujold is trying to keep her family together in a hostile land. Supporting the lie feels like a pragmatic political choice. Exposing her usually leads to her attacking you, forcing you to kill her, which leaves the hall leaderless. It's a moral dilemma placed on a snowy peak. The mountain forces you to decide what matters more, truth or order. The environment of Fright Peak reinforces this harshness. From the entrance of the Barrow you can look south. The view is apocalyptic. You see the ash plumes of the Red Mountain on Vvardenfell rising into the sky, staining the clouds. You see the fungal forests of the south. You see the struggle of life on this island. Solstheim is a land where the earth tries to kill you with fire and the sky tries to kill you with ice. Fright Peak is the throne of the ice. There is another secret nearby, hidden in the geography of the peak. If you explore the ridges around the Barrow, you might find Stalrim deposits. Stalrim is enchanted ice, a material sacred to the Skaal. It is incredibly hard to mine, you need a special pickaxe, and creates armour that is resistant to frost. Finding it here, near the tomb of the legendary chieftain, suggests that Hrothmund wasn't just buried in rock, he was buried in the magic of the island itself. The silence of Fright Peak is different from the silence of Skyrim's mountains. In Skyrim, the silence is peaceful. Here, the silence feels anxious. The ash makes the air heavy. The threat of the volcano is always there, a low rumble on the edge of hearing. As we leave Bujold to her fate, whatever you chose for her, and descend the icy slopes, we realise that Solstheim's peaks are not places of meditation like High Hrothgar. They are places of judgment. They are courtrooms where the jury is made of stone and the judge is a ghost who hasn't been happy in 300 years. But Fricta Peak is not the only giant looming over the northern glaciers. There is another structure, not far from here, that holds a presence even more terrifying than Hrothmund. A place that was once a kingdom of monsters. We are trekking west across the Moosring Pass. We are heading toward a fortress carved from the living ice. We are going to knock on the door of a king who has been dead for a long time, but who refuses to stay down. We are going to Castle Karstaag. We remain in the biting cold of northern Solstheim. We leave the judgment of Hrothmund and the political squabbles of Thirsk behind, trekking west across the Moosring Pass. The landscape here is a graveyard of glaciers. The ice is so old it has turned blue, shifting and groaning under its own weight. And rising from this frozen wasteland is a structure that looks less like a building and more like a natural formation that decided to become a fortress. This is Castle Karstaag. To the uninitiated Skyrim player, this location might just look like another ruin to explore. It's marked on the map, sure, but it sits silently on the northern coast, often ignored in favour of the main questline with Miraak. But to veterans of the Elder Scrolls the Thur, Morrowind, specifically the Blood Moon expansion, this silhouette brings back a flood of memories. Castle Karstaag was once the seat of power for a frost giant king named, predictably, Karstaag. He was a monster, yes, but he was a ruler. He held court over the Reeklings, commanded the respect of the harsh northern wilderness, and was eventually slain by the Nerevarin, the protagonist of Morrowind, in a duel of honour. Now, 200 years later, in the Fourth Era, the castle is a shell. The ice walls are crumbling, the courtyard is open to the sky. The throne sits empty, or so it seems. When you approach the castle, you find it occupied by Reeklings. These little blue goblins have squatted in the ruins of their master's home. They scuttle around the icy parapets, throwing spears and grunting. Clearing them out is standard fare, but the true secret of this mountain fortress, and the reason we're climbing it tonight, requires a specific hidden action. It requires a bit of grave robbing. You cannot simply walk in and challenge the king. He is dead, after all. To wake him, you must find his remains. Hidden in a location called the Glacial Cave, situated somewhat nearby but disconnected from the castle itself, you find a massive, peculiar skull embedded in the ice wall. It is Karstaag's skull. It is a quest item that triggers no quest marker. No courier runs up to you with a letter saying, "Please resurrect the giant Ice King." You have to find it through pure exploration or by reading the obscure journals of dead adventurers found in the snow. Carrying the heavy skull back to the castle feels like a pilgrimage. You enter the main courtyard, now cleared of Reeklings. At the far end, rising from the snow, is a massive throne of ice. The prompt appears, "Activate throne." You place the skull on the seat. The reaction is immediate and terrifying. The screen shakes. The controller vibrates. A magical blizzard erupts inside the courtyard, reducing visibility to almost zero, and from the swirling snow, a ghost rises. This is Karstaag, and he is not happy to be woken up. Karstaag is widely considered the single most difficult boss fight in the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. He is a level 90 encounter. To put that in perspective, the Ebony Warrior is level 80. Alduin, the World Eater, scales with you but is often much lower. Karstaag is a static wall of stats. He has massive health regeneration, hits like a runaway freight train, and is completely immune to paralysis and most crowd control effects. The fight is a chaotic mess of ragdoll physics. Karstaag has a stomp attack that creates a shockwave, launching the Dragonborn into the air. You spend half the fight trying to stand up while being pelted by ice shards. He summons ice wraiths to harass you. The blizzard he generates constantly drains your stamina and health. It is a brutal, old-school boss encounter that feels like it belongs in a different game, something like Dark Souls hidden inside the engine of Skyrim. There is a profound sense of legacy to this battle. You are fighting a ghost from a previous era. Karstaag represents the old power of Solstheim, the primal magic that existed before the Dunmer refugees, before the East Empire Company, before the Dragonborn. He is a remnant of the Wild North. The obscure lore here lies in the continuity. In Blood Moon, Karstaag was an intelligent if simple character. He had a court, he had politics. Seeing him reduced to a silent, raging spirit is tragic. It suggests that even the mightiest kings of this island eventually become just another hazard of the environment. The ice preserves the body, but it freezes the soul into a loop of eternal violence. But let's talk about the reward, because it is one of the most unique and debated mechanics in the game. When you finally chip away his massive health bar and the ghost of the giant king fades for the last time, you receive a power. It appears in your magic menu under Powers. It is called Summon Karstaag. The description reads, "Summon Karstaag to fight for you for 120 seconds. This sounds game-breaking. Imagine summoning a level 90 frost giant boss to fight a dragon, or to clear out a bandit camp, or just to terrorize Nazim in Whiterun. It is the ultimate I win button. But there is a catch. A tiny cruel condition written in the fine print. This power can be used 3 times, not 3 times a day, not 3 times per long rest, 3 times. Ever. Once you use the 3rd charge, the power vanishes from your menu forever. This limitation creates a fascinating psychological effect known as Elixir Syndrome, or too awesome to use. Players work incredibly hard to defeat Karstaag. They prepare, they chug potions, they die and reload. They earn this incredible power, and then they never use it. They save it. I'll save it for a harder fight, they think. I'll save it for the final boss. But then they fight Alduin, and he's easy, so they don't use it. They fight Miraak, and they decide to save it for later. Eventually they finish the game, retire the character, and Karstaag remains unsummoned, a potential weapon that gathered dust because it was too valuable to spend. It turns the reward into a trophy rather than a tool. The knowledge that you could summon him is more satisfying than actually doing it. There is a fan theory that suggests this limitation is lore accurate. Karstaag is a king, not a servant. He is not a Dremora you can bind with a spell. He grants you a boon out of respect for defeating him, a warrior's courtesy. He will come to your aid 3 times to repay the debt of honour. After that, the debt is paid. He owes you nothing. It frames the mechanic not as a magical restriction, but as a social contract between 2 powerful entities. The setting of the fight adds to the isolation. The castle is tucked away on the very edge of the map. If you look over the northern wall, there is nothing but the endless procedurally generated ocean. You're at the end of the world. The only witnesses to this clash of titans are the Reeklings cowering in the ruins. Interestingly, if you leave the Reeklings alive before summoning Karstaag, they will actually try to help you. They attack the ghost of their former master. It's a moment of dark comedy. These tiny goblins poking at a giant with sticks, choosing their new landlord, you, over the old one. It shows how quickly loyalty shifts in the harsh climate of Solstheim. After the fight, the courtyard falls silent. The blizzard dissipates. The throne sits empty again, the skull resting quietly on the seat. The castle feels truly dead now. You haven't just cleared a dungeon, you have exorcised a legend. As you walk out of the castle gates, the wind feels different. You have conquered the hardest challenge the island has to offer. The Red Mountain still smokes in the south, and Miraak still plots in his temple, but you know that the true king of the mountain has been laid to rest. We have now conquered the peaks of Solstheim. We have faced the judgment of Hrothmund and the fury of Karstaag. It is time to leave the ash and the ice of the island. We must return to the mainland of Skyrim, but we are not going to the familiar holds of Whiterun or the Rift. We're going to a place that technically shouldn't exist. A hidden valley tucked away in the western mountains, lost to time and mapmakers. We're going to find a civilization that was supposed to be extinct. We're going to touch the sky. Our next destination is the Forgotten Vale. We leave the ash-choked air of Solstheim and the empty throne of the Frost Giant King. We return to the mainland, but we are heading to the absolute western edge of the map, deep into the Druidach Mountains that separate Skyrim from High Rock. We are looking for a place that technically doesn't exist on any modern map, a place that has been erased from history. We are going to the Forgotten Vale. This isn't a simple mountain climb where you hop up some rocks. To reach the Vale, you must traverse Darkfall Cave, a terrifyingly long, pitch-black tunnel system filled with spiders and trolls. It feels like a journey to the centre of the earth. But just when you think you are lost in the dark forever, you emerge. The transition is blinding. You step out of the cave and into a hidden glacial valley of impossible beauty. The Forgotten Vale is a lost world. It is a pocket of Skyrim that has been sealed off for thousands of years, preserving a biome that looks alien compared to the rest of the province. The first thing you notice is the light. It's brighter here. The snow is pristine, untouched by the soot of civilization. The flora is bioluminescent, glowing with a soft, magical hue. Even the wildlife has changed. You encounter Vale deer and Vale saber cats, creatures with unique pale coats that seem to shimmer with the same ghostly light as the flowers. But the mountains here don't just hold pretty deer. They hold the last gasp of a dead civilization. Rising from the frozen waterfalls and glacial shelves are structures of blinding white stone, elegant arches, delicate spires, and intricate carvings that defy the brutalist heavy aesthetic of the Nords. This is the Chantry of Auriel. It is the final sanctuary of the Snow Elves. We know the Snow Elves mostly as the Falmer, the twisted, blind, goblin-like monsters that haunt the Dwemer ruins. But here, in the high mountains, we see what they used to be. We see the tragedy of their fall. Standing guard at the entrance to the Chantry is Knight Paladin Gelebor, core in-game fact. Gelebor is the only living, uncorrupted snow elf you will meet in the entire game, unless you count his brother, who we will get to. Seeing him is a shock. He is tall, pale, and noble. He speaks with an ancient articulation. He is a living fossil. To the player who has spent hundreds of hours slaughtering Falmer, seeing Gelebor humanizes the monsters. It forces you to realize that every screeching creature you killed in Blackreach was once something like this. Gelebor tasks you with the Initiate's pilgrimage. To open the inner sanctum, you must carry a heavy water pitcher, the Initiate's ewer, to 5 way shrines scattered across the valley. You must fill the ewer with holy water from each basin. This pilgrimage forces you to explore the verticality of the Vale. You climb frozen waterfalls. You traverse bridges made of ice that span bottomless chasms. You navigate the glacial crevice, a harrowing canyon, filled with Falmer who have found their way into this paradise. The contrast is heartbreaking. The savage, devolved Falmer infesting the holy sites of their own ancestors, too blind and broken to recognize what they are destroying. But the Vale holds secrets deeper than just a history lesson. It holds the source of the vampire threat that drives the Dawnguard DLC. When you finally unlock the inner sanctum and confront the Archcurate Vurther, Gelebor's brother, the twist is revealed. Vurther is a vampire. He was infected by one of his own initiates thousands of years ago. He turned to Auriel for a cure, but the god remained silent. In his rage, Vurther went mad. He felt betrayed by the light. So he crafted a prophecy. He wrote the tyranny of the sun, a foretelling that would see the sun blotted out from the sky. He wanted to blind the god that turned his back on him. He created the prophecy specifically to lure a daughter of Cold Harbour, Serana, to him, so he could use her blood to corrupt Auriel's bow. It is a motivation of cosmic pettiness. Vurther is willing to plunge the world into eternal darkness just to spite his dad. The location of the Chantry is significant. The elves believed that high places were closer to Aetherius, the realm of magic and the ancestors. The Forgotten Vale isn't just a hideout. It is a thin place. The veil between Mundus, the mortal plane, and Aetherius is stretched tight here. That is why the magic is so potent. That is why the sun burns hotter. The title of the quest, Touching the Sky, is literal. You're climbing as close to heaven as an elf can get without dying. But Vurther isn't the only monster hiding in the ice. The Vale rewards exploration with one of the coolest hidden boss fights in the game. If you possess the Emerald Paragon, a key gem found on the corpse of a frost giant in the Vale, you can open a portal to the Forgotten Vale Overlook. From there you can descend to a massive frozen lake. The lake looks empty. It is a flat sheet of white. But if you walk onto the ice, the ground explodes. 2 dragons, Naslarum and Voslarum, burst from beneath the frozen surface. These are unique dragons. They have a distinct texture that matches the Vale's aesthetic. But what makes them special is their behaviour. Unlike normal dragons that fly up and land on roofs, these 2 can dive back into the water. They swim under the ice and burst out to ambush you. Fighting 2 dragons simultaneously on a frozen lake, surrounded by high glacial walls with no cover, is a cinematic masterpiece. It feels like a raid boss encounter, and because the Vale is so isolated, it feels private. No guards are going to run in to help. It's just you and the twin worms of the lake. The reward for defeating them is finding a word wall they were guarding, or rather a word wall nearby that leads to their lake. But the real reward is the shout found in the Vale, another word for drain vitality. Wait, didn't we find that at Arkwind Point? Yes, the game really wants you to have this shout. But here the context is different. In Arkwind it felt like a curse. Here it feels like a weapon against the tireless nature of the undead. There is also the shellbug. Hidden in a cave within the Vale is a rare creature called a shellbug. It doesn't attack, it just sits there. You can mine it for shellbug chitin to make a unique helmet, but to mine it, you have to hit the living creature with a pickaxe. It's a strange, morally grey interaction. You are essentially harvesting a living tank. The Forgotten Vale is a melancholy place. It is beautiful, yes, but it is a graveyard. The snow preserves the silence. When you finally defeat Vurtha on the balcony of the Chantry, looking out over the entire valley, the sun breaks through the clouds. The tyranny is averted. Gelebor remains. He is the last of his kind, standing vigil over an empty temple in a hidden valley. He knows that his race is gone. He knows that the Fulmer in the caves are beyond saving. Yet, he stays. The mountain is his duty. Leaving the Forgotten Vale feels like waking up from a dream. You travel back through the dark tunnels of the cave and emerge into the regular grey mountains of the Reach. The magic fades. The bioluminescence is gone. You are back in the gritty reality of Skyrim, but the climb has changed you. You have seen the past. You have touched the sky. Our journey now takes a darker turn. We have climbed to the heights of elven magic. Now we must climb to the heights of Nordic death. We are going to the eastern mountains, to the peaks that border Morrowind again, but much further south than Solstheim. We are going to a place that you cannot walk to, a place that has no road, a place that serves as the departure lounge for the soul. We're going to Skuldafn, and to get there, we're going to need a ride. We leave the hidden, bioluminescent beauty of the Forgotten Vale and the tragedy of the Snow Elves. We return to the east to the Gerald Mountains that form the rugged border between Skyrim and Morrowind. But this time, we're not looking for a trail. We're not checking our map for a footpath or a winding road. We're going to Skuldafn, and you cannot walk to Skuldafn. This mountain fortress is unique in the Elder Scrolls V. It is the only location in the base game that is physically disconnected from the rest of the open world. You cannot fast travel there. You cannot glitch your horse up the side of the cliff to reach it. The only way to ascend this peak is to surrender control. You must call a dragon. The flight to Skuldafn is a pivotal moment in the narrative. You stand on the balcony of Dragon's Reach, call the name of Odaviing, and climb onto his neck. As the screen fades and the loading screen appears, you are leaving the sandbox of Skyrim behind. You are entering the endgame. When you land, you are greeted by a view that confirms you are far from civilization. The temple complex of Skuldafn is massive, a sprawling city of black stone built into the highest, most jagged peaks of the Geralds. The air here is thin and cold, the sky seems darker, more oppressive, and the silence is quickly broken by the roar of dragons. Skuldafn is not a place for the living, it is a staging ground. It is the final fortress of Alduin's army, the place where he eats the souls of the dead to regain his strength. As you fight your way up the tiered courtyards, you are not fighting bandits or wildlife, you are fighting the elite. High-level Draugr deathlords and scourges infest every corner. Dragons circle overhead constantly, not just one, but often 2 or 3 at a time. It is a gauntlet. Core in-game fact. Skuldafn is a point of no return in the strictest sense. Once you land, Odaviing leaves. You cannot open your map and fast travel back to Whiterun to sell your loot or buy more potions. You're trapped here until you finish the level. This creates a unique inventory management anxiety. You find incredible loot, ebony weapons, high-level armor, but you are encumbered. You find yourself dropping dragon bones to make room for a diamond. It forces a survival mode mentality, even in the vanilla game. You have to use what you have. As you ascend the towers, fighting through the puzzles and the hordes of undead, you realize the architecture is focused on one thing, the summit. The entire temple is a staircase leading to the sky. At the very pinnacle of the complex, on a wide stone platform that overlooks the sea of clouds, stands the Guardian. This is the dragon priest Narration. His name, in the dragon tongue, translates to vengeance. It is a fitting title for the entity guarding the back door to the afterlife. Unlike Krosis on Shearpoint, who was an assassin in the shadows, or Hevnarak, who was a schemer, Narration is a warden. He stands directly in front of the portal to Sovngarde. The visual of this summit is iconic. A swirling column of magical light, the dragon seal connects the platform to the sky. It is a tear in reality, a bridge between Mundus, the mortal plane, and Aetherius, the immortal plane. Narration hovers before it, wielding a staff that crackles with shock damage. The boss fight here is frantic. You are on an exposed platform with no roof. The wind is howling. Dragons are strafing you. Narration is spamming lightning and ward spells. He is a high-level caster, capable of draining your health in seconds if you don't have resistance. And because you can't retreat to a town to restock, you're fighting him with whatever scraps of health potions you have left after the dungeon crawl. But the most stressful part of this encounter isn't the combat, it's the pacing. As you reach the top, Narration is in the middle of a ritual. He's trying to close the portal. He grabs his staff from the pedestal, effectively locking the door. You have to kill him to get the key, the staff, back. It's a race against time, not mechanically. The portal won't actually close if you take too long, but narratively. The urgency is palpable. Let's dig into the obscure lore. Why is there a physical door to heaven? In most mythologies, the afterlife is a spiritual state. You die, and your soul goes there. In the Nordic tradition, Sovngarde is a physical place located in Aetherius, but Skuldafn suggests that the ancient Nords, or rather the dragon cult, built a technological bridge to reach it. The dragon priests believed in the supremacy of dragons, who are children of Akatosh, time. They sought immortality. Skuldafn might have been their attempt to hack the system. Instead of dying to reach Sovngarde, they wanted to walk in. Or, more sinisterly, they wanted to allow their master, Alduin, to enter Sovngarde freely so he could feed on the souls of the heroes. Narcrane's role as the vengeance priest suggests he might have been the enforcer of this blasphemy. He guarded the gate to ensure that no one else could use it. He is the Cerberus of Skyrim, the dog at the gates of hell, or heaven in this case. There is a fascinating fan theory that Skuldafn was actually the true capital of the dragon cult, even more so than Bromjunar, Labyrinthian. Bromjunar was the administrative centre, where the masks were brought. But Skuldafn was the religious centre. It was the Holy of Holies. The fact that it is hidden and inaccessible to the common man supports this. Only those with wings, or those chosen by dragons, could reach it. There is also a subtle detail in the environment. If you look at the murals and carvings in Skuldafn, they are remarkably well preserved compared to other ruins. The isolation has protected them from looters and the elements. It feels like a place that has been frozen in time since the Dragon War. Defeating Narcreen yields his mask, which grants +$50, magicka, and reduces the cost of destruction and restoration spells by 20%. It is a powerhouse item for mages. But the real prize is the staff. You pick up the staff of the Dragon Priest. You plug it into the Dragon Seal. The portal opens. This is a rare moment in gaming where you voluntarily leave the game world. You aren't just going to another zone, you are leaving Nirn. You are stepping out of the reality of the game and into the myth. Before you step through, take a moment to look around the summit. The view from Skuldafn is unlike any other. You are higher than the throat of the world's summit in terms of skybox positioning. The clouds are below you. The sun feels closer. It is a lonely, terrifyingly high place. You are the only living mortal in a city of the dead. The callback here is to our first mountain, the throat of the world. Paarthurnax meditates on the time wound, a scar in history. Narcreen guards the spirit wound, a scar in the metaphysical barrier. Both mountains serve as connection points to things beyond human comprehension. But where Paarthurnax offers wisdom, Narcreen offers only death. Stepping into the Pillar of Light is the ultimate leap of faith. You don't know if you can come back. Spoiler, you can, but your character doesn't know that. You're chasing the World Eater into the next life. As the light swallows you, the wind of the mountain dies down. The roar of the dragons fades. You have conquered the hardest climb. You have reached the ceiling of the world and punched a hole through it. But even as we leave the mortal plane behind, we must remember that not every mountain story is about gods and portals. Some are about the smaller, pettier evils of men. Some mountains are just traps set by greedy adventurers. We return to the ground. We return to the snow. We head to the northern coast of Skyrim, to a Barrow that sits alone on a glacier. We are going to find a story of friendship and betrayal that plays out in the silence of the peaks. We are going to Ironbind Barrow. We descend from the metaphysical ceiling of the world, leaving the portal of Skuldafn and the shimmering lights of Sovngarde behind. we return to the gritty, frozen reality of Nirn. Our journey takes us to the desolate stretch of coastline between the Pale and Winterhold, a region where the glaciers of the Sea of Ghosts grind against the mainland. Here, rising from the ice like a jagged tombstone, is Ironbind Barrow. This mountain climb offers a story not of gods, dragons, or ancient prophecies, but of something far more human and relatable, the fragile nature of trust. When you arrive at the base of the climb, expecting the usual hostility of the wilderness, wolves, bears, or perhaps a stray ice wraith, you find something unexpected. You find a campsite, and it is occupied not by bandits, but by adventurers. Two figures stand in the snow arguing. One is Salma, a Redguard warrior clad in resplendent steel plate, her voice brimming with the reckless confidence of youth. The other is Beamjar, an Argonian mage in robes, his posture hunched, his tone anxious and hesitant. "We can't just go in there," Beamjar pleads. "It's too dangerous." "Nonsense," Salma retorts. "Think of the treasure. Think of the glory." If you approach them, the dynamic shifts. Salma sees you not as a threat, but as an opportunity. "You look capable," she says. "Care to join us? We could use a third blade." Beamjar reluctantly agrees, though his eyes dart nervously to the looming entrance of the Barrow. This moment is a rarity in the Elder Scrolls V. Skyrim is famously a solitary experience. Unless you hire a mercenary or bring a housecarl, you are the lone wolf. But here, the game spontaneously generates a party. For the next 20 minutes, you are playing a different genre. You are playing a classic Dungeons & Dragons module. You have the tank, Salma, the mage, Beamjar, and the wild card, you. The ascent through Ironbind Barrow is designed to foster this sense of camaraderie. The dungeon isn't a straight line. It's a climb through the hollowed-out interior of the mountain. You fight side by side. When a Draugr Deathlord bursts from a coffin, Salma charges in to draw aggro. Beamjar hangs back, flinging lightning bolts and healing spells. You flank. It feels organic. It feels like you are making friends. The banter helps. Salma laughs in the face of danger. "Did you see that?" she shouts after a particularly messy kill. She's having the time of her life. She's living the adventurer's dream. Beamjar remains quiet, supportive, ensuring she stays alive. You start to trust them. You start to think, maybe I should bring these two along for the rest of the game. Eventually you reach the summit of the interior, the throne room. Sitting on the high seat is the warlord Gathric. He's a massive levelled boss, often a Draugr Deathlord or even a dragon priest depending on your status. The fight is brutal. Gathric has a shout that can ragdoll you across the room. "The three of you engage him." Salma takes a heavy hit, going down to one knee. Beamjar rallies. You land the final blow. Gathric falls. The room falls silent. The chest unlocks. The word wall glows behind the throne, offering the first word of the become ethereal shout. You turn to your companions, ready to celebrate the victory and split the loot, and that is when Beamjar turns to you. "Your blood will serve me well," he hisses. The hesitant mage, the loyal friend who spent the last hour protecting Salma, was a plant. He wasn't afraid of the Barrow because of the monsters. He was afraid he wouldn't have enough power to complete his ritual. He needed Gathric defeated, but he also needed a sacrifice, a soul powerful enough to fuel a necromantic rite to bind the warlord to his will. You and Salma are that sacrifice. The betrayal is sharp, sudden, and scripted to hurt. Beamjar attacks immediately. He hits you with lightning. He tries to kill Salma, the woman he has ostensibly been travelling with for months. The mask falls away completely. You're forced to put down the lizard you just fought beside. The fight is short. Beamjar is a glass cannon, but the emotional impact is heavy. When the dust settles, Salma stands over the body of her friend. She's confused. He tried to kill me," she asks. "Why?" She looks at the treasure, then at the corpse, and shakes her head. "I don't want any of this," she says. "Keep it all." She walks out of the Barrow alone. If you follow her, she disappears into the snow, her spirit for adventure crushed. She doesn't become a follower. She doesn't give you a quest. She just leaves. The mountain taught her a lesson she didn't want to learn, that greed rots everything, even friendship. Core in-game fact: the loot in the throne room includes a unique weapon resting on the back of the throne, the steel battle axe of fiery souls. This is one of the most valuable items for an enchanter in the entire game. Its enchantment is Fiery Soul Trap, which does two things. It inflicts fire damage and casts Soul Trap on the target. Usually you can only put one enchantment on a weapon, until you unlock the level 100 perk. This axe gives you two effects for the price of one slot. Disenchanting this axe is a priority for min-maxers, as it allows you to build weapons that burn enemies and fill soul gems simultaneously. It is the ultimate tool for the pragmatic adventurer, but the obscure lore and fan theories surrounding Beamjar run deeper. Why did he need Gathric? Some scholars point to the location. Ironbind Barrow is isolated. It overlooks the sea. Beamjar wasn't just a random bandit. He was a necromancer of significant skill. His name doesn't appear in the history books, but his behaviour suggests he might have been a rogue member of a larger cult, perhaps even a reject from the cult. He sought Gathric because Gathric was a warlord of immense power in life. To raise such a being as a permanent thrall would have made Beamjar a force to be reckoned with. There is a tragedy in his calculation. He kept Salma alive not because he cared for her, but because she was his tank. He viewed her exactly as a callous player views an NPC, a meat shield to be discarded when the boss is dead. The game flips the script, showing us what optimization looks like from the other side. It looks like sociopathy. The callback here is to the very concept of the Dragonborn's journey. We climb mountains to get power. We kill things to get souls. Beamjar was doing the exact same thing. He was just doing it to us. He's a dark mirror of the player character, someone willing to sacrifice his companions for a stat boost. The exit from Ironbind Barrow reinforces the desolation of the ending. You climb a winding stair behind the throne, emerging onto the exterior peak of the mountain. You are high above the glaciers. The view is spectacular, the endless white of the Winterhold coast stretching out to the horizon. But you are alone. The party is broken. The D&D adventure ended in a TPK, total party kill of the spirit. You stand there, holding the axe that steals souls, and the wind feels colder than it did before. The mountain didn't kill the party, the ambition did. We leave the tragedy of Ironbind behind. We have seen the betrayal of the living. Now, we must travel to the far southeast, to the border of the Rift and Morrowind again. We're seeking a different kind of warrior. One who isn't looking to betray us, but to honour us. We're going to a campsite that sits at the very edge of the playable world. A place where the greatest warrior in Tamriel waits for the only opponent worthy of his time. We're going to the Last Vigil. We turn our backs on the frozen treachery of Ironbind Barrow. We leave the corpse of the traitor mage and the broken spirit of the warrior Salma to the ice, and we begin a long trek to the southeast. We are crossing the entirety of the Rift, passing the golden forests of the autumnal hold, heading for the jagged, forbidding border where Skyrim grinds its teeth against the province of Morrowind. The Velothi mountains here are unforgiving. They are not the rolling slopes of the west, they are sharp volcanic teeth. The air smells different at this altitude, less like pine and more like ancient dust and ozone. Our destination is a campsite that shouldn't exist. It isn't marked on the maps you buy in the general stores. It is a place known only to the most seasoned explorers as the Last Vigil. To reach it, you must climb to an altitude where the game engine itself seems to tremble. You're traversing sheer cliffs, relying on the friction of your boots and the desperate hope that you don't slide back down into the valley below. It is a lonely, desolate ascent, devoid of the usual bandit ambushes or wolf packs. The mountain here is too high for petty crime. When you finally crest the ridge, finding a small flat plateau nestled between two spires of rock, you see it. A simple camp, a fire fighting a losing battle against the gale, and standing at the edge of the precipice, looking out over the world he has conquered, is a figure. He's clad in armour that seems to swallow the light, full ebony, heavy, impenetrable, and enchanted to the hilt. This is the Ebony Warrior. If you are a novice adventurer, if you have not yet reached the mastery of level 80, this camp is empty. The game literally does not spawn him until you have proven you are worth his time. He is the ultimate content gate. He is the final exam. He is a redguard of immense stature. Standing next to him, even a Nord or an Orc feels small. If you dig into the game files, you'll find his character scale is set to 1.2, making him significantly taller than any other human NPC. He towers over the Dragonborn to impose a sense of physical dominance. He doesn't turn as you approach. He knows you are there. He has been waiting for you. "The time has come," he says. His voice is deep, calm and utterly devoid of fear. This is not a villain. He has no grand speech about ruling the world, summoning a Daedric prince, or blotting out the sun. He's something far more interesting and far more tragic. He's a mirror. "I have done all that can be done," he explains, finally turning to face you. The visor of his helmet hides his face, stripping him of identity, making him an archetype rather than a man. There is nothing left, no quests to be undertaken, no villains to be slain, no challenges to face. He lists his resume, and it sounds suspiciously like your own Steam achievement list. He has crafted the finest weapons, learned the darkest magics, explored the deepest ruins, and slain the mightiest dragons. He is essentially the completed save file given flesh. He represents the existential crisis of the endgame player. What do you do when you are a god walking among mortals? When bandits die in one hit and dragons are just nuisance encounters, you get bored, or in his case, you seek an exit. His request is simple, yet heavy with theological confusion. "I seek to enter Sovngarde," he tells you, "but I must die in glorious combat." Here is where the core in-game fact meets the obscure lore. The Ebony Warrior is a redguard. Redguards have their own afterlife, the far shores, which they reach by navigating the stars, specifically the warrior constellation. Sovngarde is the Hall of Valor for Nords ruled by Shear. Why does this redguard want to go to the Nord Heaven? The community debate on this is fierce. Some fans theorize he is a cultural convert, a warrior who has spent so long in Skyrim that he has adopted its gods and its ways. He respects the Nord way of death more than his own ancestral traditions. Others speculate he might be an avatar of Raymond Ebonarm, the god of war, or perhaps a Daedric manifestation of Boethia seeking a worthy fight. But the most poignant theory is that he simply doesn't care about the theology. He just knows that Sovngarde is where the warriors go. He is, above all else, a warrior. He wants to be where the fighting is eternal. He wants to feast with Ysgramor and Olaf One-Eye. He challenges you to a duel. "Send me to Sovngarde," he commands. This is the only honourable murder you commit in the game. He wants this. He needs this. The quest doesn't update with "kill the Ebony Warrior." It simply says, "defeat the Ebony Warrior." But you both know there is only one way this ends. The battle that ensues is often cited as the most difficult 1v1 encounter in the Elder Scrolls V. The Ebony Warrior is not just a damage sponge, he is a toolbox of mechanics. First, he shouts. He hits you with unrelenting force, blasting you off the mountain if you aren't careful. Hearing Fus Rodair coming from a human NPC is a jarring reality check. It reminds you that the voice is a learnable skill, not just a divine gift, and this man has put in the decades of work to master it. He can also use disarm, ripping your legendary weapon from your hands and sending it tumbling down the cliffside. Second, he heals. When you whittle his health down, he casts Close Wounds, undoing your progress. He forces you to out-DPS his regeneration. But his nastiest trick, and the one that ends the most permadeath runs, is the Reflect Blows perk. He has the heavy armor perk that grants a 10% chance to reflect melee damage back at the attacker. If you are wielding a god tier weapon that does 500 damage per hit, and that perk triggers, you essentially one-shot yourself. You can kill yourself by hitting him too hard. It is a mechanic that forces you to respect him, to slow down, to fight tactically rather than just spamming. Power attacks. The environment of the Last Vigil plays a huge role in the atmosphere of this fight. It is just you, him, and the wind. There is no music, or if there is, it is drowned out by the sound of steel on ebony and the crackle of his lightning spells. The isolation is absolute. If you die here, no one will find your body. If you win, there is no one to applaud. As the fight drags on, the snow around the campsite becomes stained with blood. He fights with the desperation of a man who is terrified you might let him live. He doesn't want mercy. Mercy would be the ultimate insult. When you finally land the killing blow, perhaps an arrow to the knee, poetic justice, or a final shout of your own, he doesn't scream. He sighs. It is a sound of immense relief. "At last," he whispers, sinking to his knees, his massive frame collapsing into the snow. Sovngarde. His body goes limp. The wind continues to howl. You're left standing alone on the peak, the victor of the ultimate duel. But the victory feels hollow. You haven't saved a village. You haven't stopped a Daedric plot. You have simply helped an old soldier punch his ticket out of a world that no longer had anything to offer him. Looting his body feels disrespectful, but let's be honest, you're going to do it. His armour is magnificent, enchanted with health regeneration, resistance to fire, frost and shock. It is the best non-custom gear in the game, but looking through his inventory you find simple things. Potions, gems, some human heart flesh, alchemy ingredients. The mundane items of an adventurer. It humanises him. He was just a guy, like you, who ran out of road. The last vigil is a profound meditation on the nature of finishing a game. It acknowledges that the journey must end. The mountains you climbed, the enemies you slew, eventually they run out. And when they do, you're left with only the view. Standing there, looking east toward the ash clouds of Morrowind and west toward the snows of Skyrim, you realise that you are now the Ebony Warrior. You are the one with nothing left to prove. The mountain has become a mirror, showing you your own future. One day you will be the one standing on a peak, waiting for a challenger who can finally send you home. But while the Ebony Warrior's journey ends here, ours has a few more steps to take. We must return to the beginning. We must go back to the first mountain, the first climb, the place where most of us first realised just how big this world truly was. We descend from the Velethi peaks, leaving the fallen warrior to the snow, and head toward the central pine forest near Riverwood. The air gets warmer, the wind less biting. We are approaching a place that every Skyrim player knows by heart. A place of waterfalls, spiders, and the first word of power. We are going to Bleak Falls Barrow. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bleak Falls again? That's the tutorial dungeon. And you're right, it is the first real challenge most players face. But in our quest to understand the secrets of the peaks, we must look at it with fresh eyes. We must look at it not as a dungeon to be cleared, but as a mountain to be conquered. We are going to revisit the first ascent. We leave the high-altitude tragedy of the Ebony Warrior and descend back into the heartland of Skyrim. We return to the pine forests, the rushing river waters, and the comforting, mundane sounds of a sawmill. We find ourselves in Riverwood, looking up at the looming shadow of the precipice to the west. Our destination is Bleak Falls Barrow. Now I can hear the collective sigh of 1,000 veterans. Bleak Falls Barrow? We've done this 100 times. It's the tutorial dungeon. And you are right. It is the first real dungeon for 99% of players. It is the place where you learn how to solve the spinning pillar puzzles, where you learn that Draugr wake up, and where you learn that giant spiders are terrifying in VR. But tonight, we are not looking at Bleak Falls Barrow as a newbie. We are looking at it through the lens of a lore master. We are looking at it as the archetypal first ascent that teaches you the language of Skyrim's mountains. The climb begins innocently enough. You leave the muddy streets of Riverwood, where Sven and Fendal are still arguing over Camilla Valerius. You cross the stone bridge and start up the winding path. The design here is subtle but brilliant. As you ascend, the environment shifts. The lush green of the valley floor gives way to grey rock. The trees become sparse, twisted by the wind. Snow begins to stick to the ground. The audio landscape changes from the chirping of birds to the hollow moan of the wind. By the time you reach the Bandit Watchtower, that stone archway where 3 low-level enemies try to ambush you, you're in a different biome. You have left civilization. You're in the domain of the wild. The temple itself is a masterpiece of intimidation. It is not just a cave, it is a monumental structure carved directly into the peak. The black stone arches soar hundreds of feet into the air, defying the elements. It feels ancient, hostile, and imposing. But the true secret of Bleak Falls Barrow isn't the exterior, it is the interior scale. This is the best example in the game of the Hollow Mountain trope. When you fight your way through the initial corridors and reach the sanctum, the game opens up. You step out of a cramped tunnel into a massive cavernous space. There are waterfalls cascading from holes in the ceiling. Sunlight streams down in shafts, illuminating the mist. Trees grow inside the mountain. Bats flutter in the gloom. The sheer volume of empty space inside Bleak Falls Barrow is staggering. It suggests that the mountain is practically a shell. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a cathedral. It was a city of the dead that rivaled the cities of the living. Core in-game. Fact. The item you're sent here to retrieve, the Dragonstone, is arguably the most important object in the entire main quest, yet most players treat it as junk loot. It weighs 25 units, a heavy burden for a low-level character, so you want to get rid of it as fast as possible. But look closely at the texture of the stone before you give it to Farengar. It isn't just a rock with random scribbles, it is a map. The dots etched into the surface correspond exactly to the locations of the dragon burial mounds scattered across Skyrim. Delphine needs this stone not just to prove dragons are returning, but to predict where Alduin will strike next. You are carrying the invasion plans of the apocalypse in your backpack. The fact that this map was buried here, in this specific barrow, implies that Bleak Falls was a central hub for the dragon cult's operations in the Merethic era. This leads to a compelling fan theory. Why was the map here? And why is the barrow so heavily defended compared to others? Some lore scholars speculate that Bleak Falls Barrow was the regional capital of the dragon cult for central Skyrim. It sits in a strategic position overlooking the Whiterun Plains and the pass to Kilkreath. The presence of a sanctum area, the massive word wall teaching unrelenting force, the most fundamental shout, and the Dragonstone all point to this being a command centre. Furthermore, the guardian of the stone is a Draugr overlord, or Scourge, depending on level, who bursts from a sarcophagus right next to the word wall. But notice that there is no dragon priest here. There is no mask. Why? Perhaps the priest of Bleak Falls was called away to the final stand at the Dragon War, or perhaps the overlord was the ruler, a high-ranking general entrusted with the map while the priests were at Bromjunar. The environmental storytelling inside the barrow is also a tutorial in Nordic tragicomedy. You encounter Arvel the Swift, the dark elf thief trapped in a spiderweb. He begs for help. He promises to share the loot. If you cut him down, he immediately runs away, laughing at you. You fool! He runs straight into a room full of Draugr and gets killed. It's a harsh lesson. In the mountains, greed gets you killed. Arvel was swift, but he wasn't smart. He tried to speedrun the dungeon and paid the ultimate price. The mountain demands patience. But the greatest reward of Bleak Falls Barrow isn't the Golden Claw, and it isn't the Dragonstone. It is the exit. After you defeat the Overlord, learn the word of power and loot the chest, you don't walk back out the front door. You pull a lever that opens a hidden stone passage. You climb a winding stair that leads up and out. You kick open a wooden door and step onto a hidden balcony on the side of the mountain. The transition is jarring. You have spent the last hour in the dark smelling dust and rotting flesh, listening to the groans of the undead. Suddenly, you are hit with blinding light and fresh air. The view from this balcony is one of the most curated shots in the entire game. The developers frame it perfectly. You are looking south over Lake Ilinalta. The water is a deep, shimmering blue. The pine forests of Kilkreath stretch out to the horizon. The Lady Stone sits on its island in the middle of the lake. It is breathtaking. This moment is the game saying, "Welcome to Skyrim. Look at all this space. It's all yours." It captures the feeling of the sublime, the terror of the dungeon contrasted with the beauty of the natural world. You slide down the snowy rocks, finding a path that leads back to the road. As you walk back into Riverwood, carrying the heavy stone, you feel different. The villagers are still chopping wood. They are still worrying about wolves. They have no idea what you just saw. They don't know that the mountains are hollow. They don't know that the dead are waking up. This disconnect is the heart of the bedtime lore we explore. The mountains hold secrets that the valleys are too busy to notice. You, the climber, are the bridge between the two worlds, but the retrieval of the Dragonstone is not the end of the climb. It is the catalyst. Once you deliver the stone to Whiterun, and once you slay the first dragon at the Western Watchtower, the sky itself cracks open. A voice thunders across the land, shaking the snow from the trees and rattling the windows of Dragon's Reach. Dovahkiin! The Greybeards have summoned you. The mountain is calling. We must now make the pilgrimage that ties all our stories together. We leave the Central Plains and travel to the Rift, to the misty autumnal village of Ivarstead. It sits at the base of the Monovan, the throat of the world, living in the literal and metaphorical shadow of the mountain. This is where the final section of our journey begins. We are going to walk the path that thousands of pilgrims have walked before us. We are going to count the steps. We are going to meet the masters of the mountain. We are going to the 7,000 steps. We have travelled from the jagged coast of Solstheim to the hidden valleys of the Reach. We have stood on the threshold of the afterlife in Skuldafn and peered into the abyss of Kagrenzel. But for our final ascent we return to the centre. We return to the heart of the province, to the mountain that defines the skyline from almost every corner of the map. We are back at the base of the Monovan, the throat of the world. We stand at the stone bridge in the sleepy village of Everstead. The water rushes below, heading toward Lake Gear, but our path leads up. We're about to walk the 7,000 steps. This is the most famous path in the Elder Scrolls history. It is not just a road, it is a rite of passage. Legend says that in the ancient days, pilgrims would flock here from all over Tamriel to seek the wisdom of the Greybeards. Jarls would climb to beg for guidance. Warriors would climb to find inner peace. Now, in the Fourth Era, the steps are cracked, the snowdrifts are deep, and the path is lonely. The only pilgrims left are the occasional wandering hunter and you. As we begin the ascent, leaving the golden autumnal forests of the Rift behind, we pass the first of 10 emblems etched into stone shrines along the path. These are not mere decorations, they are the history of the voice, carved into the mountain so that the effort of the climb reinforces the weight of the lesson. Emblem 1. Before the birth of men, the dragons ruled all Mundus. You stop to read it. The text is worn, covered in moss. The climb establishes a rhythm immediately. Step, breathe, step, breathe. It forces you to slow down. You cannot sprint the 7,000 steps. Well, you can, but you'll miss the point. The mountain demands a cadence. As you ascend, the air gets thinner. The trees begin to change from the vibrant orange of the valley to the stubborn dark green of high-altitude pines. And then, about a third of the way up, you encounter him. The gatekeeper, the High Hrothgar Frost Troll. He is not a named boss. He has no special loot. He is just a generic enemy spawn located on a specific rocky ledge. But this single troll is responsible for more reloads, more panic, and more character deaths than perhaps any other creature in the game. He regenerates health faster than a low-level player can damage him. He hits like a freight train. He is the mountain's way of asking, do you really want this? We all remember our first time. You turn the corner, feeling spiritual and reflective, and suddenly a three-eyed wall of white fur screams at you. You try to run. You try to burn him with your basic flame spell. You try to shout him off the cliff, if you even have a shout yet. Usually you end up flying off the cliff yourself, escaping him, either by cheesing the AI on a rock or sprinting past him in sheer terror, is a shared community trauma. It bonds every Skyrim player together. We all remember that troll. We all remember the moment we realised the pilgrimage was not a theme park ride. It was a wilderness. Pushing past the Guardian, the weather shifts. The snow begins to fall, lightly at first, then in thick, heavy sheets. The wind picks up, drowning out the ambient music. You pass the emblem where Kine breathes humanity into existence at the throat of the world. You pass the emblem where Paarthurnax teaches the way of the voice to the first tongues. The lore on these stones tells a story of humility. The voice was not given for conquest, it was given for worship. The tongues at Red Mountain went away humbled, one reads. The mountain teaches that power without control is destruction. Obscure lore. Tidbit. Before you leave Everstead, there is a character named Klimek. He's a humble farmer who traditionally delivers food supplies to the Greybeards. He tells you he is getting too old for the climb, his legs aren't what they used to be, and asks you to take the bag for him. If you accept, you're carrying a literal sack of groceries up the holy mountain. This side quest is a wonderful touch of grounding reality. Even the masters of the Thuum, the monks who can speak the sky into motion, need to eat dried fish and apples. They need salt. It humanises the legends. It reminds you that the Greybeards are men, sitting in the cold, waiting for their delivery. When you drop the bag in the chest at the entrance, you aren't saving the world, you're just being a good neighbour. As you near the top, the blizzard closes in, visibility drops to near zero. You're trudging through white noise, the steps buried under drifts. The cold is palpable, and then the dark shapes loom out of the mist. The stone towers of High Hrothgar. It is an ancient fortress, silent and imposing, built into the living rock. The windows glow with a faint warm light. You have reached the monastery. You have climbed the 7,000 steps, or, as players have counted, roughly 748 actual steps. But who's counting? When you enter, the wind stops. The silence is heavy. The Greybeards welcome you not as a hero, but as a student. They speak, and the mountain shakes. Dovahkiin. They teach you that the mountains are not just geography, they are the bones of the earth. To shout is to speak the language of reality itself. They teach you to whisper the word row, and the balance of the world shifts. We have come full circle. We started our journey tonight at the very summit with Paarthurnax, the master of this school. We end here at his gates. We have traversed the peaks of the dead, the peaks of the forgotten, the peaks of the greedy, and the peaks of the divine. We have seen that every mountain in Skyrim tells a story of those who tried to conquer it, and what the mountain took in return. The mountain offers perspective. That is its true gift. From up here, looking down at the clouds that carpet the world below, the civil war looks small. The vampires are invisible. Even the return of the dragons feels like a natural cycle, a turning of the seasons. The mountain endures. It watched the Dwemer vanish. It watched the snow elves fall. It will watch the empire crumble. And it will still be here, holding up the sky. As you stand in the courtyard of High Hrothgar, feeling the cold bite at your face, you realise that the secret of the peaks isn't a sword, or a mask, or a shout. The secret is the silence that comes after the climb, the silence where you can finally hear yourself think. You have walked the path, you have touched the clouds, you're the master of the high places. The wind at your back begins to soften, shifting from a roar to a gentle rhythmic sigh. The storm that raged across the peaks has finally broken, leaving behind a sky of deep, velvety indigo. The stars of the constellations, the warrior, the thief, the mage, burn with a crisp, cold light above the snow, watching over you like silent sentinels. The adrenaline of the climb fades away. The weight of your armour feels lighter. The grip on your weapon loosens. You're no longer fighting for footing on the jagged rocks. You are safe, grounded, resting in the warmth of the hearth at the end of the road. The fire crackles nearby, the sound of burning pines snapping softly in the quiet room, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Picture the mountains we've visited tonight not as challenges, but as sleeping giants. The throat of the world is just a shoulder of stone under a blanket of white. Solstime's red mountain is a distant ember, glowing softly in the dark like a dying coal. The Forgotten Vale is a silent dream of ice and water, perfectly still. They're all resting, all peaceful, all watching over the world below. Let your breathing match the slow drift of the clouds we watched from the summit, in and out. The cold air is outside. Here, there is only warmth. The map is put away. The quest log is empty. The fast travel markers are all discovered. There is nothing left to climb tonight. The path is behind you, and the rest is well earned. Let the darkness of the screen fade into the darkness of your room, a comforting blanket pulling up to your chin. The adventure will be there when you wake, but for now the mountains sleep, and so should you. Sweet dreams.